Welcome, everybody, to the 16th episode of the Deadliest Warrior podcast. I'm your host today, Craig Taylor.
And I'm Matt Davis.
It's me. It's Lucas.
And we have our guest for this episode,
Austin Burgoyne.
Yes.
The 2021 Fantasy Football League champ.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm glad you did. This is true. Praise the sun god.
Matt, what intro did you want for this episode?
Well, we don't want to forget about Brendan on the ones and twos.
Yes. Our boy Brendan mixing up on the ones and twos.
Next week, we're going to get him some 3s and 4s.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll start a Patreon so we can buy 3s and 4s for Brendan.
Yeah. So we have definitely probably the most regrettable episode in the Deadliest Warrior catalog.
Seriously, who thought this episode was a good idea? Who sat everyone down? He's like, all right, I got it.
I got a crazy one.
I know exactly who, which we'll get to in the aftermath, is they actually talk about the impetus for this episode.
This idea.
Yeah, and I have some theories, but
I will say when we were first starting this, we did think ahead sometimes, and we're like, are we really going to do like Nazi versus Vietcong? And but once we did Taliban versus IRA, I knew we could tackle this one.
It was safe enough for them to put it on TV.
Right.
So.
I knew we could tackle this one too and make it like just by riffing on the episode. Because I guess that's what I was worried about is like this podcast is supposed to be funny mostly. And so it can be hard to talk about like, it's Nazis, but because the show is so funny, it makes our job kind of easy.
Yeah. What's funny about this one is not that aspect of it. It's like the people representing them in the actual show itself this time is so ridiculous.
The whole show itself is just absurd. Like, this is the first time I've watched it in like 10 years, and it just reminds me like how like absurd this show is and how over the top it is.
yeah.
Like when we had RJ on a couple weeks ago, and he's like, I hadn't watched it in a while. And I watched this episode, and it was like,
we had RJ on a couple weeks ago, and he was like, hey guys.
Okay. Well, we're gonna do our best to keep it light. We have Matt representing the Waffen Ss. We have Austin and Lucas representing the Vietcong. And I want to throw it over to Matt real quick. Matt, off camera, you've described yourself as a Nazi fan. Is that accurate?
with water in my mouth. Yeah, I was like, I
think I did hear you say that one time.
I was like, Craig, can you introduce me as the Nazi guy, like the guy that's really into him? I'm gonna go on record and say no.
Okay,
no,
that's fair. So, sort of getting into the episode a little bit in terms of how they describe these troops. So the Waffen Ss,
bad.
Yeah, well, they reiterate that maybe not enough.
A number of times.
Yeah. They say that they're fanatical shock troops who led Adolf Hitler's charge for world domination. And the Viet Cong they describe as the ragtag guerrilla force that took the U.S. military head on and won the Vietnam War. Matt, so apart from being kind of a Nazi like aficionado, I guess what I wanted to ask you is that most people know like what the term Nazi means. What do they mean specifically when they're talking about the Waffen Ss?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Craig, because did some notes on it. And yes, I forgot to wear my full outfit, that I just keep around like the guys on Deadliest Warrior.
Can you imagine like being one of the people who are like, okay, we need you to come on and represent the Nazis on this TV show.
But then both of them were like,
way too excited to say yes.
Yo, can I wear the uniform?
They're like, can I talk like this?
They definitely took like the patches off of the one guy's uniform right before they started filming.
Yeah, he showed up and they're like, dude.
The lightning bolts and shit.
We're like, we let you have the pipe. But the patches are
we got to draw the line.
Would have been funny if you like little bubbles blown out of that pipe.
We'll get to the pipe.
So, I do want to say before I get into the Waffen Ss and what they are, the description for the Viet Cong as the ragtag guerrilla force, I thought was interesting because it's very close to how they describe the IRA. So the Viet Cong are described as the ragtag guerrilla force, and the IRA are described as the unstoppable urban guerrillas. And right after that, Peter Crow describes the IRA as a ragtag and bobtail outfit. So I was just like, I feel like they just watched they were like, all right, how did we get away with when we did this the first time?
Well, they just have these like dumb categories laid out where it's just like guerrilla warfare here, overly aggressive team here. Here's the generic terms we use for them.
So to get into some of the history, what separates the Waffen SS and what people are specifically talking about. So Adolf Hitler.
Ever heard of them?
Ever heard of him?
Season 4 for sure. Adolf Hitler would have been in there.
Yes.
Oh, big time.
I'm shot. It would have been Hitler versus Stalin.
In the first episode. Of season
They kind
4.
of already did that in real life, though.
You're right. True. You're right.
Can nobody win?
So Hitler first formed the SS as his own personal bodyguard. Okay. This is what they say on the show. These are what they tell us on the show, that Adolf Hitler first formed the SS as his own personal bodyguard. During World War II, they expanded into an elite fighting force, the Waffen SS. Led by the SS, the German army took over Europe, and then they held out for a time against the Allies after D-Day invasion against all odds. And they also kind of covered the Battle of the Bulge.
Against all odds?
Yeah.
On the D-Day invasion when they had the clips and...
No, after the D-Day invasion.
Okay, fair enough.
They're basically trying to, polish up an L that the German army took, a handful of L's they were taking at that time. But they did pretty good for the circumstance.
Except for losing the war.
Right, yeah.
And being awful people.
Yeah.
So the research I uncovered, the SS stands, the SS in Waffen SS stands for the Schutzstaffel, meaning, loosely translated to protection squad.
Brennan, can we get a confirmation on that?
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Yep.
The origins of SS started as a small group in 1925 that included Heinrich Himmler. And their job was to provide. By the way, how did Hitler get away with having a number 2 named Himmler?
I always thought those were like a mispronunciation of Hitler when I used to see his name when I was a kid.
That shit is made up.
I hate to do a tangent here, but that just reminded me of it. I went to our local convention, still CityCon, and I was just kind of scanning for the different items. And I shit you not, this dude, among a bunch of other stuff, he had a Heinrich Himmler action figure with like little props and toys.
Oh my god!
And I was like, who the fuck in the right mind would buy that and carry it around the show? Heinrich Himmler. I think he was part of like a dictator series that they had.
It's like
it's still in its original packaging.
Yeah, it was crazy.
The Dictator series. Yeah, I keep it right next to my serial killer collection.
Some might say Dick.
The Dick Squad.
Yeah, I think I was at that convention and I saw Matt in cosplay.
I'm gonna squash those rumors right now. This is all
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. So they were originally like security for the political party meetings and rallies of the Nazi Party. So see, at the time Germany was collapsing. It was during the Great Depression, and it was after World War I, where they basically got handed this huge bill for all the damages in World War I. So Germany's collapsing at this time, and there's many political parties vying for control of the government, including the Nazis, the Communist KPD, the Democratic Socialist SPD, and other factions. And these parties would often get very violent with one another. They'd be holding rallies, and like you had the red shirts were the communists and the brown shirts were the fascists, and basically the brown shirts would hold a rally and the red shirts would show up and start throwing bricks and fire bombs into each other, and then it would get violent. So they had to set up, all of these parties had to set up like paramilitary wings basically to run security when like shit just got out of hand.
This is after World War One?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is in 1925.
They're in like shambles.
This is in the 20s and the 30s. So eventually the SS numbers swelled and they became a faction within the Nazi Party that was completely pledged to the service of Adolf Hitler. I didn't write down their specific oaths, but they take like an oath like to obey, and they were the ultimate Hitler simps basically. Now after Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, he used the SS to assassinate rival leaders within the Nazi Party. This was known as the Night of the Long Knives. In the SS, they had a few different factions within themselves. So there was the these are German words, so I apologize, German fans, but the Allgemeine SS, which means General SS, they were responsible for policing. And then there was the Waffen SS, which translates to armed SS, and they served as military units. Other groups within the SS included the Death's Head, responsible for running concentration camps, and the Gestapo, who were the secret police of, Nazi Germany. The Waffen SS were meant to stand as the pinnacle of the Aryan race in the military, and they were the most radical units. You often hear them get described as like shock troops, and that they're always leading the German advancements, and that's kind of because like that was their role. They were the most radicalized in the ideology, and so they were going to basically die fighting.
Well, they paint on the show too that the Waffen SS on the show are just like this war machine that keeps pushing forward and pushing forward too.
Well,
I didn't mention that they were all hyped up on meth too, which is why they were able to.
Right. There was experimental meth being used, within their ranks, and the Waffen SS was always like getting, they had some of the cool sci-fi Nazi experiments being done. But they always got like the latest technology and stuff too, which will become important when we get into weapons. But it's important to understand they're not just like an infantry unit. The Waffen SS is like, they have factions in the Air Force. There's tank divisions that are SS tank divisions, basically. Any branch of the German military's got some kind of SS unit in it. And it's just, what it's really signifying is that this is our most like politically indoctrinated units, and it's meant to be like the leaders on the battlefield, essentially. And the Waffen SS are probably most famous in America for leading the counteroffensive at the Battle of the Bulge, which was Germany's like last-ditch effort to turn the tide of the war in Western Europe. But of course, the Waffen SS did a lot more stuff in Eastern Europe, the invasion of the Soviet Union. I do have to mention, we can get more into this later too, because the show talks about like certain criteria meant to join the Waffen, like you have to join the Waffen SS. But it was pretty strict at first, but as the war went on and they needed more guys, like those restrictions started.
You'll do.
Yeah, they started to loosen up. Unfortunately, one race that was never allowed in the Waffen SS, the Polish. The Polish were seen as subhuman, that's what I read, and so they were not allowed to join. But they were, as they were rolling into Eastern Europe and Russia, at the Soviet Union at the time, they started conscripting people into the SS. So
I was gonna say, I don't feel like any Polish people were like, me,
Pick me.
Yeah. I will say, hearing you tell that story, I am just so grateful that there is no rise in fascism in America in the year 2022.
Well said.
Yeah, Walt Disney World really needs to stop.
What?
I don't know. It's on your shirt.
All right, moving on.
Yeah,
So
I have a few notes on the intro too.
Yeah,
but,
so-
we'll get to that stuff.
yeah, it's kind of like another appetite cleanser. I don't know.
Did we do the show stats for the
No,
Nazis?
we're getting there.
Okay, because I want
Let Craig host.
I want
Dude.
a bitch.
Let Craig host.
Yeah. So Vietcong, I just want to ask you guys, I think people have a general idea of who the Vietcong are. Was there anything that you found in your research that surprised you about who the Vietcong were?
Let me give you the first taste we get of the Viet Cong in this episode. We get a nice shot right at the beginning of a Viet Cong soldier just going and this helicopter crashing in the background, just in case you didn't know that they beat American soldiers.
This episode is laden with like so many shots of American soldiers getting killed.
Like looking
They
stupid.
brag about, like, each
Yeah.
team brags about, like, they've been known to kill bajillions of American soldiers. Well, this team, they've killed bajillions of... I was like, this is an American show.
Yeah, I don't want to be insensitive to any viewers watching, but like a lot of the shots, because of the production value of the show, are honestly kind of funny with how
Yeah.
like goofy they are, and maybe none funnier than that shot where the Viet Cong guy is just, he's not even aiming, he's just spraying
It's like in a Predator where he's like,
Yeah.
He's just spraying his.
Not really even in the direction of the helicopter. It's kind of
it's the
straight up
opposite
in
direction.
The guy in the helicopter was like, "What is that guy doing down there?"
Yeah, that's why he crashed.
We're gonna drop the load.
We're falling right out of the sky.
They like insert a CGI helicopter in the background. They're just crashing in the hill.
I could see them editing in post. Like, we need more to this. We need a helicopter.
We need
crash.
something exploding in this shot.
Yeah.
They keep like driving home the point though that like both of these teams killed American soldiers. I'm like,
Yeah.
this
They
is
did
an
mention that
American
a couple
show.
of times. They said like a couple of times they're like two of the deadliest warriors that
Yeah.
America's faced.
So the Viet Cong were officially known as the National Liberation Front of South Vietnam, as in they were trying to liberate South Vietnam was their mission. They were armed communist political revolutionary organization, say that 3 times fast, in southern Vietnam and Cambodia. So the Viet Cong is essentially the military force of this National Liberation Front of South Vietnam and was called the Liberation Army of South Vietnam, or LASV. For the sake of the show, they're going to just be blanket the Viet Cong, or VC,
Yeah.
as they like to take that from Full Metal Jacket. So they fought under the direction of North Vietnamese against the South and against the United States during the Vietnam War. They were originally started December 20th, 1960 at Tan Lat Village. They were originally formed after the defeat of the French colonial forces, which I think they actually do mention that on the show.
They do.
Vietnam was a French occupied territory, and they kind of rose up under Ho Chi Minh and kicked out the French.
They were called the Viet Minh
Yeah.
after Ho Chi Minh. Ever heard of him?
So here's a little fun fact for you that I found. France, after they got kicked out, asked the U.S. to drop 3 nuclear bombs on Vietnam to regain control of their colony, which the U.S. did not listen to, thankfully. So French troops were trying to retake Vietnam. United States, Australia, the Philippines, and a few other countries started backing them. And over the course of the time, the U.S. eventually just it became like the U.S.'s responsibility after all the other people started pulling out. And the other side, the Viet Cong, were backed by the Soviet Union and China. So the Viet Cong had both guerrilla and regular army units. So they weren't just this entirely guerrilla fighting force that they, like every single one of them was this untrained, but they had an actual army too. But the most famous is like the guerrilla fighters for obvious reasons. So they famously used the Ho Chi Minh Trail, named after Ho Chi Minh again, to quickly move around and use their knowledge of the environment to launch surprise attacks. Because these surprise attacks, the Viet Cong actually initiated 70 to 75% of all battles in the Vietnam War. And I kept saying before this I wasn't going to get into the war very much, but here I am. It is said that what caused the U.S. withdrawal from Vietnam was constantly conflicting orders from headquarters, poor leadership in the field, and being told to stand at defensive positions and not to take any offense, which went against our training. So they were essentially, the U.S. role was supposed to just be defending these positions. And what this plays into what made the Viet Cong so like almost like folklore-y, or like, you know, they're like nightmares. We were just defending these positions and they were constantly launching these like extremely well planned out surprise attacks on us and setting all these booby traps. And so that's kind of why some of the troops got wrecked over there.
Yeah. Well, the whole objective of the Vietnam War kind of seems a little.
Yeah.
There like really
seems a
wasn't
little-
one. Like,
Yeah.
From a lot of what I saw, like people like vets giving interviews and stuff. Like I watched this one video actually not too long ago. It was like a veteran. He was just talking about like all the shit that he saw over there, and he's like, I didn't really know why I was over there. Like, you know, I
Yeah.
read the newspaper that they distribute saying that like we're doing this good thing, but then I walk down the street and like the citizens or whatever who may be the VC hate me, and they have reason to hate me, and like he's like, I don't know
Yeah.
why I'm here.
Yeah, I always kind of thought of it like if you're North Vietnamese or, you know, part of the Viet Cong, you have a clear objective, and it is we are gonna fuck with the United States until it costs so much money and so many dead troops that
Till they
they
leave.
leave, and then
And
we
you look at World War II with like, if you look at America in World War II, there's a very clear axis, very
Yeah.
clear enemy.
yes,
You know.
Yeah.
And then take that to modern times. There's obvious, you know, analogies to like wars we're fighting in the Middle East where we just have no objectives. So-
absolutely.
Whether it makes sense or not, the logic that the U.S. used at the time was it was their war against communism. because they were they saw Vietnam as like this big conflict area, which was like the first domino in this big line of dominoes. And if they let the Soviet Union and China convert Vietnam under Ho Chi Minh, they let them like become a communist place, that every other place around them was just going to fall and become communist. Was their like argument? Should we have been there?
It's up for debate.
Was it our fight?
Yeah.
It's up for
I do have weird, like, I guess humorous memories of in elementary school, teachers would tell us that we lost the Vietnam War, and parents would complain if they're like if their dads fought the Vietnam War, they got so pissed.
It was a stalemate.
Yeah.
People would be like, the U.S. has never lost a war.
So there was the famous Tet Offensive, which was the attack that essentially, once the U.S. troops were established there, that was the one that really surprised them and kind of made the Viet Cong known. Then after that, there was the very effective Battle of Hamburger Hill, called the Battle of Hamburger Hill because it was just like a meat grinder, how many people died in this battle, essentially. And this was the first thing that once it hit newspapers was back home in the U.S., where people really started being anti-war and these big protests rose up. So in 1975, they reached South Vietnam capital of Saigon, which is the famous fall of Saigon. And it was very clear they were going to take the capital, so the U.S. withdrew, and most of the South Vietnam soldiers defected. And in 1976, the Viet Cong was officially disbanded after all of Vietnam was united under communist rule. So just real quick, I'm going to touch on who Ho Chi Minh was. His real name was Nguyen Sinh Cung. He was the president of Northern Vietnam from 1945 to his death in 1969, and he led a long, ultimately successful campaign to make Vietnam independent. And he was pretty much the reason that Vietnam opposed the French and kicked them out to begin with. He was regarded as one of the most influential communist leaders of the 20th century, and that's why the trail is named after him, the capital is named after him. But he died at age 79 in 1969.
Nice.
After 250,000 people attended his funeral.
I forgot to mention that Adolf Hitler was most well known for his series of rap battles with Darth Vader.
I think I watched a video about that actually.
Yeah. No.
Commander of the Third Reich.
Hilarious.
The
Little
epic
known
rap
fact.
battles of history.
Little known fact. Also dope on the mic.
Jeez. All right, well, moving on from that. Now that you got a little taste of these warriors, let's get into the stats, which apparently Lucas has a bone to pick already.
Yeah.
So, real quick, Nazis, who they describe as the notoriously evil Nazis. I mean, I don't disagree, but it's just kind of funny. Reign of Terror, 1933 to 1945. I like how, like, for regrettable warriors like this, they have to call this the Reign of Terror, not like active during. It's like, okay, just so you know, they're evil.
They were bad guys.
Mermaid man going, evil.
Yeah. Height of 6 feet.
Bullshit.
Weight, 175 pounds. Allegiance to Adolf Hitler. A very useless stat in the case of Deadliest Warrior.
You're telling me every single one of them was 6 foot.
I'm sure they take like the average or something.
I'm sure Deadliest Warrior just makes it up.
Well,
I actually am
like-
probably going to agree with Lucas and say that I don't think that those stats come from like anything. I am pretty sure, judging by having looked at how many episodes we've looked at, like I really do think those stats just come from.
I'm sure at least one SS soldier was 6 foot.
The average height in
yeah.
Germany right now is 5'10".
What was it in?
Yeah.
Early-
Probably shorter.
Yeah,
Probably
probably shorter. 1945.
Well, in
What if
a
it's at
fight
6
like
feet?
this,
5'8".
in a fight like this, height is almost a disadvantage if you're talking about pure firearms and booby traps. So, you know, it is what it is. Viet Cong, Reign of Terror, 1954 to 1976. Height 5'4".
Bullshit. They were 6 foot.
Weight 120 pounds. It's like Jesus Christ. I feel like to get into like get through like buds, don't you have to carry like over 120 pounds of gear or something?
Yeah,
I
but,
don't
like,
know.
to crawl through the trail and stuff. Like, have you ever seen diagrams of what the rat tunnels looked like and stuff? Like how they
No.
they're
Probably
so
not.
tiny.
Yeah.
Like it's like not a museum, but like you can go through there and like take tours, and like they dug extra stuff out to make it more comfortable, and it still is like,
Wow.
so you gotta be
Are they
tiny.
still clearing like the landmines out of those today?
Probably.
All right, if you
Optimized
just follow me through here.
Jesus. Okay.
It's a problem. It's a real problem impacting Vietnam. They have not cleaned up all of the landmines from this yet, and it's pretty nasty. There's like fundraising to help
Adopt
clear
a
up.
minefield.
Yeah, pretty much over. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Allegiance Ho Chi Minh, which we covered. Jeff says, look, we're not here to argue ideology. We just want to do clean tests of the warriors behind them. Okay, Jeff. Does anyone have any thoughts on that statement?
I wrote it down because it is a weird line. It's like the show is acknowledging like
It just makes me laugh. I don't know
yeah,
why.
the show's like acknowledging
It's
that
just
it's
like COA.
yeah, like profiting off of like bad guys or
Yeah.
whatever.
But they won't acknowledge one giant event that they don't bring up on the show.
That's true. There's a certain word that's never mentioned. On
You
this
think they
episode.
would, but
Yeah,
you know.
right.
Moving on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just like the show. So, going on to the experts, we're going to start with the Nazi experts. I will say, fair warning, pretty not so sexy. What's that?
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Can I just give a couple notes that I got of the intro before we get into experts?
Yeah, sure.
There was a couple funny things I saw. So, so I noticed like there is a theme in this episode of them constantly showing like a whole bunch of weapons that were used by both of these warriors that I would have rather seen in this episode that are never tested. Just in the intro, I mean, we see like a Waffen SS guy with an MP40, which is mysteriously absent. We see,
Especially when the guns they use are so identical.
yeah, and then the German rifle, the Kar 98K, gets shown a bunch, and we don't see that. We also see the
SKS.
the SKS and the AK-47 on the
They have a
Vietcong
PPSH
side.
too.
Well,
Show that quite a bit.
the PPSH they show a lot, and it's Silvio Wolf Bush, who we'll get to in a second. He's in the Fight Club messing around with an SMG, and they're constantly showing a PPSH, which is a Soviet era submachine gun that was used in World War II. But like the Viet Cong would have had PPSHs,
Yeah,
probably.
If anyone would have.
Yeah.
Them being Soviet backed, most of their supplies and weapons were just leftover World War II stuff from the Soviet Union.
I do find it interesting that, probably the most iconic weapons of the German army are like the Mauser rifle, that Kar 98K that was their general issue, and the MP40. I mean, everybody knows from Call of Duty, from movies, from everything. Like that's like the iconic, almost German World War II gun. And the fact that it's missing is very
I
weird.
didn't even notice that, really. I didn't think about that.
I
I didn't even recognize the gun that they did use. Like I assumed
Yeah,
like
we'll-
all the
we'll
Call of
get in-
Duty that I played, I would know.
We'll get into the
German
MP.
gun.
We'll get into the MP28 and my theories on that. But the MP40 is missing, along with a number of other iconic German weapons. And most glaring with the Viet Cong is like no AK-47.
Yeah, literally any time you picture the Viet Cong, it's AKs.
Yeah.
I assume because they don't want to duplicate weapons. That's like something that they
Probably,
try very
yeah.
hard to, But
So we'll get into that later. I also noticed for footage of the Battle of the Bulge, I swear to God, the B footage they're using is from Band of Brothers. I am not joking. I think like I think they took Band of Brothers footage and did like high contrast on it or whatever, like lightened it. So I don't know if they have the rights to use it or if they're stealing.
Try not to get that copyright claim.
it's like mirrored.
Straight up, dude. Like, look at some of that. Anytime they show it's in the winter, and you'll notice like the production value on that is a lot better than any of the other stuff, and they all have different weapons and stuff like that.
And they didn't leave Los Angeles for filming any of this. And
No.
they're talking about the, I think it was Vikings, where they just turned the color temperature way down and added fake snow.
Yeah,
This is different.
If it's not from Band of Brothers, then it's from a different like TV show, like they took it from.
Wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Yeah,
I'll take a closer look. I'm not going to take the time to find the actual clip they stole, but, if someone out there knows the episode they stole from, let us know.
Allegedly stole from.
allegedly. The last two things I want to say was Max specifically says this one will be 5-man squads.
He says they're going to bump up the simulation's power to be able to handle it.
Which it's nice to be back at 5 because the formula is like if it's ancient, it's 1-on-1, and if it's modern, it's 5-on-5. But for the last few episodes, we've had a 3-on-3,
4-on-4,
and we've had 2 4-on-4s, and so it's nice to be back at 5-on-5. And last thing I wanted to say from the intro was Jeff. You forgot Jeff's. This isn't in the intro. That's why you didn't mention it. When Jeff says, "When you believe your opponent's a dog, it's very easy to pull the trigger."
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna get to that later on, where they go into like the picks.
Yes.
And he says, and Max says Vietcong because they're unconventional weapons and because the U.S. lost to them and not the Nazis. It's one of those things. Like, I guess I see his point, but it's
So bad.
I got something about the intro. Max need to intro a new outfit. Get rid of that fit.
I
for that
agree.
yee ass haircut.
Yeah, the haircut.
I agree. All right, let's get into the experts, Craig.
Yeah.
I do have some recommended movies on here too, but I'll wait for your call on that.
Okay. So, not too much to say about the experts. Nothing too sexy, unfortunately. Starting with the Nazis, Silvio Wolf-Busch. He is.
Wolf.
I'm not doing that. He's listed as former German military, and he has a comedically Nazi voice. So my research showed him as an actor. I couldn't find anything about him being in the German military. But what are you gonna expect from Deadliest Warrior?
It's classified.
Yeah. The only film credit I recognized was The Fault in Our Stars.
I guess he's in that for a second.
Yeah, he's born in Germany, which makes sense. Hobbies include horseback riding and singing. I read an interview with him where they're like, he's a modern day Renaissance man, but again, no mention of his military history. So, and I did find on his Instagram, he has this awesome video, which I will be inserting into the edit. He's doing this monologue where he like does these quotes from Game of Thrones. It's awesome. So let me.
Are they
Is
in
it
his
actually-
German accent?
It's him. He's trying to do like some kind of, not copy, but like audition. He's like practicing stuff. Hold on. Let's see if I can.
Here it is.
Bet MGM.
Let's look. For 17 years I've seen it on face after face. You all despise me. Kingslayer, Oathbreaker, man without honor. Ever heard of Wildfire?
Doing the fucking Jamie Targaryen
Mccain
monologue.
was obsessed with it. He loved watching people burn, the way their skin blackened and blistered, and melted off their bones. He burned lords he didn't like. He burned hands that disobeyed him. He burned anyone that was against him. Before long, half the country was against him. He saw traitors everywhere.
I think that was it.
That's amazing.
So he's doing his thing out there. Find him on Instagram. He's Silvio Wolf-Busch, as you could imagine, on Instagram.
Yeah, you can find him pretty
Wolf-Busch.
easy. I actually found on his IMDb page that he is a screenwriter, director, actor, and stunt actor. He's worked on a variety of film projects. I don't know who wrote his IMDb bio, but in it says he is a veteran of the German military
Okay.
and has some martial arts training. He also wrote, directed, and starred in a film called The Last Mission: No Man's Land, which is about World War II. And it said like he had to call upon his World War II knowledge or whatever. So maybe he's like a history buff that, is a stunt actor or actor that applied for this role. And they were like, you're in.
When was he in the German military?
I tried to watch that Last Mission movie, but I could not find it anywhere. So maybe if you can find it on like a torrent website. Well, you wouldn't do that because it's illegal, but
You wouldn't download a car, would you?
right.
I was hoping when you went to show us that video, I was hoping you'd be like, okay, the video is right here. You're betting with the king of draft books now. Bet MGM.
I am glad.
Sponsor us.
Censor out BetMGM. They don't sponsor.
Yeah,
us.
Bet MGM. Now's your chance. Sponsor us.
BetMGM and Dr. Squatch.
Get on now. This drink tastes really good. I'm not sure what that label says. So, that label could be Canada Dry, could be Coke,
Could be anything.
could be Sprite,
Could be just a generic green soda.
could be RC.
Yeah, RTIC. So moving on to Robert Wilhelm Mccain. who's billed as a military historian, wears a Nazi officer uniform the entire episode. I understand that, like, I think they give some of these people outfits, like in the Jesse James versus Al Capone. I think they may have given him like them an outfit, but he's just enjoying it way too much.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll talk about him throughout the
To
episode.
like a distasteful level.
Yes.
Like
I also think they didn't give him that uniform. He brought it on his own.
yeah,
Austin's theory is he showed up that day with the uniform and they had to make him take off the patches and the button.
he's just enjoying it way too much.
It's basically just like a gray. I mean, you could tell it's like a military style, but like,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they're like, okay, that's enough filming. He's like, anyone up for camping?
God.
Yeah. And
That's from like Family Guy.
yeah, I found basically nothing about this guy. I saw an article about him being on Deadliest Warrior, but nothing else. I have a feeling Wilhelm isn't even like his actual name. They just threw it in there.
What was-
I see him referred to as Robert Mccain, but they
Just added it to me. I'm sorry.
what was his
Wilhelm.
little like title when they introduced him?
military historian.
Yeah. German military.
German
historian.
military.
I could have guessed that. Even not knowing it, I could have guessed that.
Based on how he dresses.
They should have just given him the moniker, the same moniker you guys gave me, the Nazi guy.
Nazi descendant.
Yeah. So
Yikes.
Silvio, he gives the line, "No finer soldier ever fought for a worse cause," sort of arguing the point. I felt like that these warriors were so well trained that they had to put them on the show. Like, and so I'm sure we'll see more of that. But yeah, nothing really I found about Robert.
Yeah, I didn't find too much more either. Writer and producer who focuses on World War II history.
No one could beat the Nazis except America, Great Britain,
Soviet Union.
Soviet Union.
Yeah, so moving on to Vietcong, we have Tuan Nguyen. I always struggle with that last name. Is that how you
It's a
pronounce it?
very common
Nguyen.
last
Nguyen.
name.
Yeah,
it's
I always struggle pronouncing it, but he is billed as a Vietnam War survivor, and they say he's an Army weapons and explosive specialist, which is kind of interesting.
That's fun fact. That's not a real title.
Yeah, well, Deadliest Warrior. I found less than nothing about him, less than even Robert Wilhelm Mccain. However, in lieu of research, I will read you one of my only search results. I got 2 pages. This was on the second page. The website is titled, oh shit. So,
Craig's porn just popped up.
no, this is what it is. It says, "New sex video mamas, busty sister naked, sex drive in male." And then the description of the website says, "Extreme female ejaculation, E-Prex with 3 X's, Deadliest Warrior, camera masturbating," spelled that way, "I'm gonna beat your ass, gay porn tattoos, toilet key, Jen Ah Yugen nude."
What the fuck?
You got this from searching this dude's name?
Yeah. I tried clicking on it, but my pop-up blocker stopped me, and I figured that was far enough.
Yeah, you
You
didn't.
click on it and you're like, this website will give you a virus, dude. Don't click on this.
The
Yeah.
links we go to find stuff on some of these obscure experts, that's how you know when we can't find anything, good luck. Okay. I feel
Jesus
like
Christ.
one of us comes close to a virus or a crypto scheme every fucking week.
There's
we
always
film
one
this.
expert that's
Yeah.
just so off the grid. And he has somewhat of a unique name, too. So the fact that I couldn't find anything on him, I mean, I understand the last name isn't that rare, but I don't know. I figured, like, I typed in his name, Deadliest Warrior, and I only found like the wiki. So
I typed in his name, like, since they say he was in the U.S. Army, I typed in that. And there was apparently a fair amount of Vietnamese born people that joined the U.S. Army during that. And like 10 of them had that same name. So that could be
Maybe,
like a
yeah.
popular first name too.
I think he did share a name with like an officer in the Vietcong.
Yeah,
too,
maybe
that
that's what I saw.
Yeah, so maybe I'm wrong. It is like, but like 2 pages. I don't know. He's kind of off the grid.
Yeah, but the U.S. Army grenade and firearm specialist, not a real title.
Good to know. The next one we have here is Danny Boyer. I guess I should say the last one. He's definitely the most public out of any of them, maybe even more so than Silvio. David Wenham pronounces his last name Buyeu, but it's like Boyer, so I don't understand.
Oh, yeah.
Danny, correct the record on how your last name is pronounced, but he definitely is like Danny Boyeu.
That's like a show writing moment. They're like, we need you to sound like you're from like more
Yeah,
from
right.
your.
They were like, make him sound more Asian. You know?
Yeah. He's a Vietcong weapons expert. The show says he was born at an air base at the height of the Vietnam War, which I did see that story corroborated. There was some more detail. I wasn't clear whether like his family was part of the Vietnamese and they defected to the U.S. Army, or he was stationed there. His dad, it wasn't like super clear, but
I got some. Whenever you're done, I got clarification on it.
okay. He's also says he's a private security contractor, which I saw. What's it called? I saw multiple places that he was part of the security contract. He's a stunt actor. He did stunts in Avengers Endgame and other Marvel movies, Punisher, Inception, Pirates of the Caribbean, Call of Duty, Baby Driver, and many more. And a cool fun fact is he has his own page on the MCU wiki.
Wow.
I did see that too.
Yeah, kind of cool little notch in his belt. So, Lucas, do you want to give some context to his background?
Yeah, what I could find is I don't think he was actually born on. Oh, okay. They just say airbase. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I couldn't tell if like they defected or like.
Yeah, well, his father was a commander in the 518th Fighter Squadron for the People's Republic of Vietnam. Vietnam. I want to say that's South Vietnam Army.
People's Republic sounds like it's communist.
Yeah, but it's always like the opposite in those times because the national liberation of the South. Well, either way, his father was a commander in one of the armies, and then due to the fall of Saigon, which is why I think he was on South Vietnam, because during the fall of Saigon, his mother fled the country with him and his younger sister after surviving 3,000 mortar rounds fired at the airbase the previous night. And his father was taken as prisoner of war for 13 years. So I think his father was part of the South Vietnamese army, because if they're the ones who lost.
He was part of one of them.
Yeah. Well, he was taken as prisoner of war for 13 years.
Wow.
And our Danny grew up in Santa Clara Valley in California and started training martial arts at the age of 8.
Yeah, so he definitely is the most legit. There's the most about him. So, yeah, he's cool.
The boy with the dragon tattoo.
I wouldn't go that far. He does have a dragon tattoo, actually.
He does.
So, anyway, so I guess time to go into weapons without further ado. So,
hold on. We got to get to the recommended movies section.
oh, I'm
Greg.
sorry. I'm
Come
sorry.
on.
Go ahead.
Don't you know? This is a movie podcast. This isn't about Deadliest Warrior. I usually give you guys a companion piece every week. Like there's one 4-hour long movie you have to watch. But because this is World War II and Vietnam, there is so many movies. Some of the best movies ever made. So I tried to narrow it down for you guys. For World War II, I tried to go with movies that feature like a character that is in the SS. So there is an oldie, but a goodie. There's a 1965 movie called Battle of the Bulge. And in it, Robert Shaw plays a German tank commander who's a member of the SS. You get to watch him do his little singing ceremony, and he leads the tanks against the Americans. It's not a very historically accurate movie. Then an even less historically accurate movie is Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards that we have here. Christoph Waltz plays Colonel Hans Landa, who's a member of the SS. They kill a lot of SS guys in that movie.
They do.
And then I remembered this 2008 movie called Valkyrie.
Oh, with
where Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise plays a German officer who attempts to assassinate Adolf
That
Hitler.
story is insane.
Yeah.
The actual operation that
It's
they
of course
did.
based on a true story, Operation Valkyrie. So
I'm going to cut in for 1 second just as clarification. I think I was correct. It says South Vietnam during the war was called the Republic of Vietnam.
okay,
So
you said People's Republic.
It says People's, but the North was called the Democratic Republic of
Okay.
Vietnam. So I think the South was the People's.
Okay,
So don't quote me on that, but that's clarification.
so those are 3 World War II movies that all have a lot of like Nazi characters in them, and they're mostly the villains. So, and then Vietnam, very hard to narrow down the best Vietnam movies because there's so many really good ones. So I just went with 3 heavy hitters because I couldn't find any that are like shot from the Vietcong perspective or whatever. So Apocalypse Now, 1979, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Martin Sheen plays a Green Beret sent on a secret mission during the Vietnam War. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
It's on Netflix.
Platoon, 1985, directed by Oliver Stone. Charlie Sheen plays a fresh soldier assigned to an infantry group in Vietnam. That's all I'm going to say. There's a huge cast of popular actors in that one. It's an iconic movie, and it is free on Amazon Prime right now.
Is that Charlie Sheen pre-cocaine? Or
I don't know when. Charlie Sheen might have started at like age 5, so maybe not.
He started on the set of Apocalypse Now while his father was drunk and
when
doing
you watch
cocaine.
it, he is super young in it, and I think he is billed as like his real name, like Emilio Estevez or whatever it is.
Charlie Sheen?
Yeah.
That's his real name?
Yeah.
I thought that was like his uncle or something.
No, all the Sheens, their last names are Estevez, and like their first names are something Spanish. That's what Martin Sheen was a stage name, and Charlie Sheen just made his that because
the dude from the Mighty Ducks is like an Estevez.
Yeah, he's related to them.
Okay.
He just didn't like have a stage name.
I learned more about the Estevezes than I did about Nazis or Viet Cong so far.
Last but not least, though, Full Metal Jacket, 1987, directed by Stanley Kubrick, follows a Marine through basic training and then through his experience in Vietnam. That's probably my favorite Vietnam movie.
Yeah, me too.
I haven't seen it.
It's very brutal, and I think it honestly is a really good movie just about like masculinity. It's some of the good and bad elements of masculinity in general.
Yeah, it has those moments in it too where it's like kind of funny, but it also is like seriousness behind that little bits of funny.
That's why I say it's very like it's not all bad and it's not all good. Like it shows you what happens when a group of guys gets to hang out together, and then what happens when you give them guns. You know, like
It definitely, I think it's one of those movies too that if you are like Dom, then you'd be like, yeah, this movie's awesome.
yeah,
Like,
you might misunderstand it. Yeah. But anyways, those are 6 for you guys. Gobble them up. Check them out. So
am I permitted to continue?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Craig.
The people
wanted to
need to
get
know
that
about
in.
these movies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That they've probably never heard of.
Movie mindset.
Yeah. So moving on to weapons. Finally, we start with special weapons. Starting out with the Punchy Stakes, which they describe as the Viet Cong's toxic terror sticks.
What makes them toxic, Craig?
Well, Austin, they are literally poop on a stick.
Shit.
It is actual. One of the warrior's weapons in Deadliest Warrior is poop on a stick.
Yep.
Stats are 3 feet, poison, human feces, and sharpened bamboo. You kind of can't help but laugh about Punchy
It's
Stakes.
just the way they're like physically presented on the show. It's just so funny.
Yeah.
It's like they have a bunch of bamboo stakes with like Nutella.
Yeah, it's like
Absolutely
melted chocolate.
Like chocolate or something.
That's someone was back there eating their lunch, like spreading Nutella. Can we borrow that for a minute?
Need it for the Punchy Stakes.
The intro is really funny too. There's like a soldier, he falls into the Punchy Stake booby trap, and it's the freaking sound effect they play for his scream.
It was devastating. It was a man killer.
The stock sound
I
effect.
call
It's
it the Twisted Metal sound effect. If you go back and play any Twisted Metal, that's the exact sound clip they use. Like whenever you blow up someone else's car, it's that.
Yeah. So, is there any interesting history you guys found on Punchy Stakes?
Yeah, they're 100% real weapon used by the Viet Cong, deployed in substantial numbers. The real pictures of them actually look pretty like violent in real life. They were always camouflaged to be a surprise. They were often incorporated into the pits that we see, and the sticks would actually be put at an angle, so it would be impossible to remove your leg without doing severe damage. It would also take time to save someone from these pits, slowing down the units. And they were coated in poison from plants and animal venom, as well as shit. This was, of course, to cause
I would take the
infection.
venom, to be honest.
The spike ball that they show also is commonly called a mace or tiger trap. And it was commonly 24-inch metal or wooden ball, not usually mud. I mean, I'm sure they made them out of anything.
Yeah.
Welded or nailed and weighing upwards of 40 pounds. And there was many types of these swinging traps that like they were all shapes and sizes. It's not just that definitive shape. And Punchy Stakes were actually banned in the 1980s with the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. And they accounted for 2% of the wounds to American soldiers during the war.
Wow.
And I think it took them like a while. They probably didn't even clean up all of the pits and stuff yet. There's probably some still over there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, how many soldiers do you think they came home and they told everybody how they had like went over a landmine or something? That's why they lost their legs. But in reality, they got the punchy stake. They had to get their legs amputated because some Vietnamese shit got in their legs.
Yeah, it's not even from like the puncture wounds. It's from the infection of the shit.
Jeez.
They have sticks and rocks, and all we have is these lousy machine guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did read something that the point of the Punchy Sticks necessarily wasn't to be lethal. It was to slow down units. Because essentially, if someone fell into this pit, this unit had to like take time getting this guy out and evac him, and it slowed down any progression.
Interesting.
Well, cool facts on the punchy stakes. So moving on to the test for the punchy stakes, they drop a pig into the trap. Not that much to say. It goes through some of the poopy sticks. A little more interesting is the spike ball test.
Some call it freaky deaky.
There's some funny B-roll of a U.S. soldier getting impaled in the throat.
They show that clip like at least 4 times throughout the episode.
They're really proud of it. He's like,
Straight through the neck.
When he hands him the Punchy Sticks too, and they intro them, he goes, "Whoa, watch your finger."
Watch out, it's sharp.
I missed that. That's funny.
Yeah, it's like great. He just hands him a piece of wood, and he goes, "Watch your fingers."
It's like not even.
Yeah, they're little ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's a stick, dude.
yeah. And in the spike ball test, it's like, could you imagine Max? He has a punchy stick. He's licking the Nutella off the punchy stick in the background. What?
His tongue just starts bleeding because it is that, in fact, that sharp.
Careful, that's sharp. They just spin around like someone's like impaled.
Max, that wasn't the Nutella one. That was the animal poison one.
Oh man.
So they do the spike ball test. It looks like it gently knocks the dummy over, but Dorian says it's a kill since the dummy's head gets split in half on impact, which is not really
Off
fair
a concrete
at all.
floor.
Yeah, with like not the normal like obvious like body. Like like RJ was saying, where force doesn't really apply correctly in a ballistic gel compared to a human body, so that's not gonna, unless you're like a 90-year-old man, that's not gonna crack your skull in half. So Dorian says it's a kill just because of that. And Robert then compares the spike ball to something out of the Flintstones, which I have to agree.
I will say on the slow-mo video, I mean, those balls could weigh like 40 to 100
that
pounds.
thing had a lot of mud. And for all we know, it was shit, but it
Yeah.
was a lot
You
of
see
But,
that
like,
one
the-
bamboo go like
Yeah,
pretty
the
deep
bamboo
in
goes
there.
almost out the back, like
Yeah,
on
it
the
does.
slow-mo. It like when they do the fast motion, you're just like but on the slow-mo, like had that bamboo, it goes through like, you can't see me down here, like down here. But if it goes through your chest or something, I mean, you're
like
dead.
your internal.
Yeah,
And-
that would mess you up.
Yeah, like it has potential to, like, I mean, proofs in the pudding. They were used in real
The
life.
Nutella pudding.
The proofs in the Nutella. They were used in real life. The pig falling through. I mean, I don't know. It looks pretty nasty to me.
It does
like,
look- it
if
does
you
look pretty
picture
nasty.
yourself just walking, and then like the next thing you know, you're in this shit pit, impaled. Like
Just all
You know,
your weight
15
falling
times.
down on that thing.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a pretty.
and like it
The
depends
reason
on
it's banned.
how you fall too. Like it could go like straight through your neck or like through your eye and stuff.
I know we've given up on the sim and trying to explain the sim. Anytime there's a trap or something, I'm always curious because we have multiple traps on this episode, and I always wonder how those are incorporated into the sim.
'Cause you like
Like,
especially in the Vietcong case, you have to take into like the environment as
Yeah.
a
And
huge
you're
factor.
And the punchy stick like pit versus the spike ball are two totally different weapons, but they're counted as the same.
two completely different things, and
They got a lot of kills though. It was the second most for the Vietcong.
anything before that we've seen that's a trap is an
trap.
is an explosive that, even though it should be set up ahead of time, theoretically could be set up in the moment. Like you could pull the pin on a mine and like just
that one you're digging
set
for
it
like
there. Yeah,
a couple days. To get that pit.
but the punchy stake, yeah, exactly. Like that is at least couple hours worth of work there.
The Viet Cong guy's running. He pulls down his pants and starts pooping on his stick real
It's like,
quick.
wait, I forgot to shit on it.
Yeah,
But-
so it's interesting, like, how does this incorporated? How would this be incorporated in a sim? Like, which one is it using? You know, like,
My favorite part of that, though, the Nazi guy,
Proprietary.
yeah, right.
the Nazi guy, they spin the camera over him. He goes, "You got to be kidding me!" While he's in like this Nazi uniform, and then he goes, "If a Waffen SS used this, he'd be court-martialed for cowardice in the face of the enemy." Because the Nazis didn't use any traps or cowardice weapons, right?
Yeah.
They weren't little pussy bitches, right?
That's pretty big talk from the guys who orchestrated and carried out. Oh wait, what? Sorry, the footage just cut there. That was
Horrible
weird.
events. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just cut
Big,
there.
horrible events.
It's just like Deadliest Warrior couldn't mention it. you know,
Yeah, they
we can't
wouldn't
mention-
use any traps, though. That's cowardice.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Reign of Terror. So moving on to the Flammenwerfer. So
The Flammenwerfer.
the stats are a range of 80 feet, weight 48 pounds, ammo, gasoline, and tar, and 10 seconds bursts. For those of you at home paying attention, we have a flamethrower versus poop on a stick. And this might be the worst matchup of the entire series.
Pretty mismatched.
We say it every episode.
Yeah, I know, but you're talking about a flamethrower, an actual real one this time.
I don't disagree.
Versus
with you.
poop on a stick. So
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying,
Like, you
it's
can-
so funny how every episode we come to this thing where it's like, is this the worst matchup?
It's
Like,
just like the Flammenwerfer is like an offensive weapon that you can like actually use to attack people. Like you have to wait. It's a trap.
Right.
Punchy
It's a
Stakes.
trap.
Like it's no guarantee that this is even going to work.
yeah, that anyone's even gonna fall into it.
Yeah.
yeah, they do have some horrific B-roll footage of what I assume and I hope is French resistance, not Jewish resistance.
Yeah.
Getting burned alive.
I thought about that.
Yeah, and I was like, you see the little like top hat, and you're like, what is being communicated here?
Yeah.
Are these, we're gonna say they're French,
yeah,
please. I cannot imagine that they don't mention the Holocaust, and they also don't, and they have.
yeah. Oh, you
killing-
mentioned. Oh, Craig mentioned
Bleep
it.
that. Bleep that.
Yeah,
I'll bleep that.
we were gonna try to see if we could do what this show did and go the whole episode without mentioning,
Ignoring the biggest thing.
one of the biggest events in World War II.
They just subtly don't
Yeah.
mention it.
Yeah,
That was the other division of the SS.
Yeah.
It wasn't the none of them did anything in that.
it's funny. I don't think I bring this up in the aftermath of my notes, so I'll say it here. One of the things they say is, I think it's, oh no, it's Kieran Elliott. He's like, I thought they'd be really controversial with the Nazis, but everyone online understands that it's good fun and
Good fun.
Well, he doesn't say good fun, but he's like
He implies
they understand that's just a weapons test and not anything too serious.
It's
And it's
for-
like
it's research
No, you don't get it,
purposes.
Kieran.
Yeah.
Flash forward 10 years and see.
Right. Yeah. He did
Germany,
not.
why did you start World War II? This is good fun.
Kieran did not. Yeah, did not foresee the trajectory that the internet was taking.
Why are all these like white high school virgins totally okay with the Nazis being represented at Deadliest Warrior?
It seems like they were actually the fan favorite.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Well, there's Silver Wolf says there's no better soldier. I think history begs a different.
Right.
Yeah. So going back to the Flammenwerfer, one thing I thought that was interesting was the whole 10-second burst thing. What was that about? Did you find anything else kind of interesting about
Did
this
it
weapon?
it specifically mention that like in the stats?
It says like 10-second bursts. I have
been there.
I don't know. I hate to break it to you, Craig. I don't know why they put that.
I assume maybe we get too hot.
yeah.
After 10 seconds.
Yeah, I
10
imagine you-
seconds is a long time for a continuous
I
flame.
think that's just literally the amount of fuel that it has.
Yeah,
Like, you can't
probably.
carry a lot in that little backpack. That's
Yeah, how
Oh,
much
I
that
mean, it-
shoots out.
yeah, it
too.
consumes
I noticed
a lot.
he runs out in the test. If you pay attention, they keep playing. There's
Yeah,
a
I
part where they
noticed that
keep
too.
playing the sound effect, but nothing's coming
Yeah.
out of it. It's just like dripping out the front, kind of. I saw that look. So So when they intro this weapon, they show a group of resistance fighters getting burned, and we get a close up on like Anakin Skywalker's face on Mustafar, and then we get like a screaming stock sound effect again. It's like, ah!
You have to like cut that in, right?
Yeah. It's just too funny. So it looks like they actually got a real flamethrower for this test, which is really cool.
No propane torch, it looks like.
Props to DW. They did manage to get a real flamethrower, and it appears a real bouncing Betty later in this episode too. So this was one of the standard flamethrowers for the German military during World War II. It is definitely, I think it's appropriately classified as a special weapon, as it's not something like a soldier would typically be carrying around with them unless they were going on a specific mission. I know they keep mentioning that they brought a flamethrower on. It's very much like in the IRA episode where they're like, this will flush the Taliban out of their holes. This one, they just kept saying like, this will flush them out of the jungle, you know?
Yeah.
And which is kind of comical because it does get brought up. Is it Danny Boyer?
I don't remember.
He's
the one who talks a lot more because it seems like the other guy has like
he
doesn't speak
English is not his first language. Yeah, well, Danny brings up a great point that the U.S. had flamethrowers in Vietnam.
Yeah,
and
napalm
and
napalm.
And so it's kind of like it highlights how meaningless it is to put the Vietcong into a setup like Deadliest Warrior. Like
it's one of the things
we'll get more into that later, I'm sure, but like
to that point, one of the questions somebody asked in the aftermath, they ask about how the Nazis would handle the Vietnamese caves and like the cave systems, and I forget which, not Sylvia, the other guy, Robert. Yeah, he's on there, and he says like, "Oh, well, would have shot the flamethrower in there." And then Kieran was talking about like oxygen would eventually be cut out, and then Danny says something about how like they had second level caves and third level caves, which wouldn't somehow have been affected. I mean, I don't really know who I even believe in that situation.
Look at like a diagram of the rat tunnels. I don't know if there's a more like actual term for these, but they were like in depth. They had like sections where
I think the Vietnamese just called them tunnels.
So
I think the most famous ones that Austin is talking about are the Chu Chi tunnel.
Okay.
And there's like they had these really like weird systems where they had like water right here, and they had like a tunnel right above here. So if you shot the flamethrower down, it just would hit the water or shoot right back up, but you can just like go right underneath it and come back up.
I saw they built them like they could flood them.
They were
if someone was coming
elaborate.
after them, they could flood like certain parts of it, or they had like certain parts trapped.
They had like boxes of like poisonous snakes just rigged up in case like, because like they all knew where not to go, but like if a U.S. soldier comes down that way and there's just like poisonous snakes and spiders sitting there.
Yeah,
they were crazy.
There's a show, the infographic show I've talked about before. There was a U.S. military position called the Tunnel Rat, and it was his job.
That's why I
to
keep referring it to it as
and
that.
He would go in and like his job was to like clear people out of these tunnels, and they show you like how
what a great
awful.
job.
Yeah,
I saw somewhere
Been promoted.
a lot of people actually volunteered for that job for whatever reason, but like a majority, I'm pretty sure, of the tunnel rats, as they were called, volunteered for that position.
Wow.
You got to have some balls on you for that one.
Yeah. Well, good luck getting a 6 foot tall Waffen Ss guy in there.
They'd get stuck.
They're all 6 foot, so 6 feet tall. Expanding on that, I just wanted to say, like, when you see the flamethrower versus the poop on the stick, right? It is it's instantaneous in your head that you're like, well, this isn't even close. Like a flamethrower is obviously like a better weapon. But then it really makes you think, like, this scenario, like 5-on-5, like, what are we really getting from it by putting someone like the Vietcong in this, where, like, this is not what they'd be.
It really makes you think, who pooped on the stick?
Yeah, which guy pooped on
How'd they apply the poop? Do they stick it up there? Like,
oh, that would hurt.
that's probably worse than the tunnel rat, is the person has to either poop on the stick or hold the poop stick and get poop on their hand? Like, there's a lot of questions here.
Would you rather poop on the stick or be the guy holding the poopy stick?
Imagine the guy holding the stick just like, oh, sorry, dude.
The last thing I wrote was that when they give the edge to the Flammenwerfer, the narrator says, the Flammenwerfer takes a flame-broiled edge.
Do they? Do you guys have like who gave the edge to who? Because I feel like they, one of them gave the
Jeff.
edge to the Punchy Stakes.
Jeff gave it
who
to the...
originally wanted, or not wanted, but was saying that he thought the SS was going to win.
Yeah.
He gives the edge to the Punchy Stakes.
He likes
I
to do
will.
that.
I know he does. He is kind of like a pick me.
Definitely not the hottest take in this one, though. We'll get to
Literally,
that.
but
yeah.
so the
Literally.
the test real quick. Silvio, he lights a hut and a bunch of office ferns on fire. Danny says that the Vietcong wouldn't have been there and the operator wouldn't have even gotten that close.
Yeah.
Which thankfully this is the last time we see that argument. I don't think it really ever comes up again, but it was refreshing to see that. And as for the edge, of course, it goes to the Flammenwerfer. And yeah, Jeff does have the goal to give the edge to the Punchy Stakes because they don't need a man to operate. Which, like, okay, I sort of get his point, but
It's not strong enough of a point.
oh yeah. Also, I don't think the sim really pays attention to that because I guarantee
Yeah.
the sim just is like, oh, there's people using poop, and like, you know what I mean. I don't. If we knew more about the sim, it would make more sense. Logically, I can sort of see the argument. Here's a weapon that you set it and forget it. But like, you're talking about a flamethrower versus poop on a stick.
It's
like,
all.
Can't,
It's also though like, what are the odds that someone walks over the Punchy Stake trap? Because
Yeah. In the sim, it would be like Battleship where you just pick random spots for the traps
Yeah.
and they're like C4.
Punchy stick.
Punchy stick hit.
that dude got Punchy staked. Yeah. Whereas a flamethrower, you're bringing it with you and pointing it at the enemy.
Well,
so.
and it's like the Punchy Stakes are effective against like whole armies, you know, not
Yes.
5-on-5.
Yep.
Like I don't know if they account for that or what.
Yeah, that's a great point, Austin. Like the odds that one of 5 guys is going to step where he needs to in the big arena versus when, you know, you're dealing with armies and you're setting these up on trails.
Yeah.
Definitely somebody's going to like fall into it, you know.
Yeah. So edge flamethrower. We take a little bit.
Flame broiled edge.
Flame broiled edge.
Flammenwaffe.
Yes. We take a little bit of a break from weapons to get into some training. They say the Nazis had to be proven Aryan ancestry and couldn't even have a filling. And the Vietcong had to train on the go. And they only trained with 3 rounds per day to learn how to conserve ammo. And Tuan says that you didn't have to be good to join the Vietcong. The Vietcong would make you good, which is kind of an interesting quote. Any thoughts or amendments to those statements?
There is a misconception that the Viet Cong were all just like civilians that just became this guerrilla like fighting warfare. No, they had a trained army also. They were trained people, and I could find nothing verifying this 3 rounds.
They worked
per
with the
day thing.
NVA, like the North Vietnamese army.
Yeah, I feel like they get this misconception because sometimes they would just wear normal clothing to blend in with the people around them. So people just kind of assume they were untrained. But they were still like soldiers.
It's also naive to think that a lot of the Viet Cong are probably not just NVA soldiers that are being sent in behind enemy lines and just like pose as civilians and do terror, you know, like guerrilla tactics basically.
It's not like some guy walks off the street, they hand him like a gun and like, you're Viet Cong now.
Like, dude, you want to join the Viet Cong?
And they're like, you any fillings?
Dude, oh my god, I hate that shit so much. So the show claims you couldn't even get in with a tooth filling.
Who cares?
In order to join the
When were
SS.
fillings invented?
And that you had to prove your Aryan ancestry back to 1750. How many nerds keep that shit around? Like, how many nerds have that shit laying around where it's like
how would you even prove that?
that's like 200 years into the past. Like, oh, well, as you can see, my grandma wrote this note on a napkin that said my great grandpa was Aryan.
But could you imagine, like,
1713.
yeah, like going to your dad and being like, Dad, I need to get in the Waffen SS. Do you have a copy of your ancestry for the past 100 years? Just like, son, I don't even know who my granddad was.
Exactly.
I don't even know who your dad is.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
Is that a feeling?
yeah. So obviously I mentioned that these stats definitely got like these requirements definitely got loosened as
They started losing.
yeah, the war went on and they needed more people. I guarantee you can have as many teeth fillings as you wanted to. They also said Waffen SS recruits learned to box in lieu of standard military drills. Teaching them the importance of striking the first blow is what they
The Blitzkrieg tactics.
which is so lame. The Waffen SS, they probably did learn to box as like part of a hand-to-hand training or something, but I didn't even bother to fact check that because I guarantee you they went through like regular army drills.
You see, like, just like there's a one-on-one with like an American soldier and like a Nazi, and he pulls up the gloves, and it's just like the subtlest mano a mano.
And then
The sock 'em bop.
Yeah,
they also claim there was a 30 to 40% burnout rate because of the sheer physical stamina required, but compared to like modern special forces, that's a pretty low burnout rate. Modern special forces is like over 90% burnout. Like, so I was like, for the best of the best soldier that's ever been fielded, this is not, yeah. And then last thing I wanted to mention on my SS notes were some of the garb. Like, they have very recognizable uniforms, and I wanted to mention there was a ring, a sword, or a dagger that could be gifted to you by Heinrich Himmler, who ran the SS. He was the head of it. And the SS dagger is the most famous of that, and it's known as the SS Eirendolch. It's a pretty iconic weapon, and it's often worn like with the uniform. The SS are also known for displaying those SS lightning bolts. This is how they like would write it, and then the skull and crossbones would be on their uniforms. So if you ever see, you can see it in movies, Craig, I'm going to send you a picture of Christoph Waltz with the skull and crossbones hat on, and it's going to be right here.
I bet you had to be a pretty big douchebag to earn one of those.
Yeah.
no greater soldier ever fought for a worse cause.
So if you ever see that in a movie, you see those lightning bolts, or you see the little skull and crossbone on the lapel or on a hat, he's an SS guy. Watch out.
Good to know. Keep my eye out. So moving on to what I think is long range. They don't really say.
They say long range.
Okay.
Yeah.
This submachine gun range.
The 10 feet in this show. Every gun is tested from like 10 feet away.
I think it's the Nazis have the MP28. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the stats for the MP28: 150 yard range, 9mm ammo, 32 round mag, 550 rounds per minute. So my thing is, as I sort of stated earlier, that I didn't really recognize this gun. What would it be comparable to?
I mean, what do you mean? What would it be comparable to?
Like, I don't know if there's any like analog or like, oh, this gun's also known by this name, or is it really just something that's not very common?
You probably would not recognize it. So the first submachine gun ever made is the MP18, and that is designed in World War I by the Germans, and they field it. The MP28 is like an improvement on the MP18, and they look exactly the same. So this is a German submachine gun, but obviously the much more iconic German submachine gun of World War II is the MP40.
MP40 Juggernaut.
Yeah, with the aperture sight.
Yeah, and then Martyrdom.
Classic World at War setup.
The most iconic like World War II Germany weapon missing from the episode.
Yeah, I wrote like the elephant not in the room is the MP40.
And what else? What other like warrior going to use on that? I would understand maybe like the AK in the Vietnamese, but
so I have two theories. My two theories are that they couldn't get an MP40. It's number one, or that they thought it too similar looking to the MAT 49. Because it looks similar. So I thought, well, listen, we're going on Deadliest Warrior logic here. Also,
Uncharted territory.
the only other little piece of evidence I'll pull out is maybe like the granddaddy to Deadliest Warrior, one of the granddaddies, is a show called Weaponology that we have referenced on here before. Anytime there's a crossover between warriors, last time it happened was Green Beret Spetsnaz. You got to watch the Weaponology episode. You can find them free on YouTube.
Unlike the Deadliest Warrior.
I know. So they have a Waffen Ss episode, and on it, they only highlight like 3 weapons, like 3 guns. And one of the guns they highlight is the MP18 on there. And so I was like, I'm just very interested to see, you know, like maybe they just use the MP28 because of the Weaponology episode. Last thing I'll say about it, it sucks because you want to see the MP40 and the MP28. You're like, what the fuck is that? Like, I've never seen that before. It's not actually really that big a deal, though. Like, these guns are both very similar. They fire the same cartridge. They have, like, the same rounds per minute, and they both have, like, a 32-round magazine. So, for the test they're doing, where he's shooting at these mannequins from, like, 10 feet, I didn't get that upset about it because I was like, it really wouldn't have made much of a difference, probably. It's just cooler.
Yeah.
Like, you want to see the cool gun on the show.
They make a good call on this one, though.
Yeah.
It's just for like a gun test that we normally get excited about. It's not that exciting.
I like
Yeah,
how
this
for
time.
the SS they put like one of those little mesh like to simulate like jungle brush.
Camo net.
Yeah. So moving on to the test.
Yeah.
Jeff wants to know how well the gun would do in the jungle. And they bring back the office ferns
In a
and the
field in
robots
California.
with little Vietcong hats. And then at the end of the test, this is where Jeff goes, "Time! Time!" And like
He gets really into that one.
yeah, we were cracking up at that watching that.
Put that clip in.
I will.
Time!
He like, freaks the fuck out.
It would be funny if he screamed and they zoomed out and the guy's like right in front of his face.
Yeah. He's
I
like,
was excited with this test to see the attack bot make a comeback.
yeah, one thing I think it's in this one. It also later tests with the Vietcong. Did you notice they're wearing like nursing scrubs, like the Vietcong? They're like little like hats that you find at like the fair, and then nursing scrubs.
They didn't know what to put on them.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was 3 attack bots, and I was just thinking about with the attack bot.
yeah.
Because that's what a person would do as you're getting shot at.
And they would do like the yoga.
Die.
The VC.
Oh yeah, I guess is that's this test, right?
Yeah,
The VC yoga,
yeah.
where like the dummy does like a funny stance. So.
The mannequins are like getting blown apart by this gun, and the one
He
like
shoots so many rounds into
the one's like bent over, and he's like, "Is that VC yoga?"
Well, don't they give them 3 magazines, they say, for this? Yeah, it's like
3 targets.
they just blow these things apart. It's like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a very odd moment where, in introducing the next gun, Danny says, "I've got a gun that's going to take out a ton of Nazis." And very seductively, Silvio says,
But I've got something in the Vietcong arsenal that's going to take out a ton of Nazis.
Indulge me.
"Indulge me."
Yeah. It is weird how he is going for like a seductive thing there.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Like you should have a glass of whiskey in this hand.
Yeah.
Indulge.
And it just takes you off guard. Like he's pretending to be a Nazi. Like, I wonder how much acting they're told to do.
That's kind of one thing that I was thinking about the whole time I was watching this. I was just like, I just cannot, like, I see them like yelling cut and like, okay, we want you to say this now. Let's try this one.
Yeah, but it's like going back to the Game of Thrones monologue. Like he's so in the zone, pretending to be this Nazi.
Indulge me.
Yeah.
I did want to mention that when they're going over the damage from the MP28 and the MAT 49, Dorian is absent, and you don't notice because he's completely redundant on this show. And when Jeff was going through and he's like looking at this mannequin that's riddled with like 30 bullet holes, I was like, there is nothing to be gained from this test. Like it is entertaining, but there's nothing scientific.
Gun goes
here.
bang.
It's the gun equivalent of when they give someone like 5 minutes to just hack at a pig.
Yeah.
You get nothing because, again, give me anything and I'll fuck up a pig. Same with the gun.
Yes,
Like any
exactly.
gun is going to do that. So,
That was definitely one like problem that I noticed like watching it. Was like, of course you're gonna shoot like 20 rounds into each of these mannequins, and
Right. They're all
Sure
dead.
enough, they die.
Yeah. So going on to the MAT 49 stats, as we said, almost identical. Range of 110 yards, still 9mm, still 32 round mag, 600 rounds per minute. Danny says the Viet Cong captured it from the French, which you kind of touched on that. I didn't know about like how French were involved.
Yeah.
So
they used to roll over Vietnam.
Yeah. So can you give some background on like, is it like a French weapon or?
Yeah. Essentially, this was developed by the French in 1947, produced in 1949, hence the 49 in its name, and it was used by the French army. The show stats accurate enough. The Viet Cong had access to some MAT 49 submachine guns because the Vietnam was previously French territory, but it was not a very common weapon there. So raise your hand if you've heard of a MAT 49.
I thought it was weird when I saw it in the show. Brendan raises.
It's similar to like some Viet Cong used M16s. Where they get them, they got them off like U.S. troops.
Yeah.
But it probably would have made more sense is some Chinese or Soviet weapons that we've touched on, as they were the backers sending supplies.
Like the PPSH.
Yeah,
which is used in the intro for the MP20.
Yeah,
28.
Did they ever bring that back out for any other?
No, it's just that is the gun he's holding in like the Fight Club. So that's clearly like the airsoft gun they have laying around that they let them play with inside the Fight Club.
It does have a really small barrel too. If you look, like it doesn't have, but
it's got the drum mag. The guns don't even look similar. They're not similar looking guns. And even when they're introing, they're like, the Waffen Ss had, and they show him like playing with a PPSH, the MP28, and then they put a picture of a completely different gun on the screen.
Well, there's like the Chinese Type 53 carbine and the AK-47 and the Vietnamese produced K-50 submachine guns probably would be like the most three popular. Not the worst pick. The MAT 49 itself is known to be a very reliable gun, even in jungle environments. And again, the only thing that is interesting about it too is the pistol that we're going to get to, the Tokarev, is chambered in 7.62 by 25. This gun, the MAT 49, could also be chambered in that as well as 9mm. But they're a guerrilla warfare group. They're going to take whatever they can get their hands on.
Scott asked the status of the next pod. So
It's getting made. Scott, if you're watching the pod right now, this is me talking to you.
Hi, future Scott.
But yeah, not the worst weapon they could choose. It was one they had access to, but they are a guerrilla warfare group. So they're going to use sometimes whatever is available, usually like a Chinese or Soviet weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well said.
Yeah. So for the test, they emulate Normandy for some reason, and
Conquer a D-Day. Oh my god!
They emulate D-Day. There's like 3 guys and 2 tank busters.
Yeah. So Robert is watching this and he's smoking a pipe, looking nervous at the test, as not as as possible. He goes.
He seriously does. They're like, all right, look super worried.
Yeah, it's awesome. Silvio then calls it a toy gun with zero reasoning, even though it's like identical to theirs.
It's a gun.
It's the same gun. They're both 9mm submachine guns.
Yeah. These guns are identical. Even I could tell. No. The edge is even. I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
Yeah,
Max says, dude, you shot his pants off.
I was wondering how they were going to do the edge because, like, I thought the same thing. I was like, these are extremely similar weapons, extremely similar tests. How do you, like...
So, I think the edge being even is fair. I thought about Green Beret Spetsnaz when they test the M4 and the AK and they call it even, so they bring in a tiebreaker, another long-range weapon. And I wish they had done that here. Like, if they had used that same setup, like... Oh, these submachine guns are even, so let's bring in
RPG,
another long range. Well, so I was thinking about the RPG, but for long range specifically, I thought 2 great specific matchups that you could have had would be the Kar 98K versus the SKS. Yeah. We see them a lot. I feel like they're almost intended to be in this episode because
they
of
are
how
in background shots. In this episode.
And how prominent they are in the reenactment. But they're neither are ever tested, and the Kar 98 is notoriously like that was the main weapon of the German military in World War II. It was Hitler's favorite rifle. So would have been cool to see. Another cool long-range matchup could have been the German Sturmgewehr, the first like assault rifle, the STG-44, which the Waffen SS did have access to and did start getting fielded, in like 1943 or whatever, 42 or 43. And that could have been a really good comparison up against the AK-47 because they're both like mag-fed assault rifles. And a lot of people claim that the Sturmgewehr was like that Mikhail Kalashnikov, when he fought in World War II, had access to like the Sturmgewehr from like dead Nazis and used it to make the AK. So
the show blew it.
I would say the show definitely blew it.
Put in the Adam Sandler, you blow it.
Yeah, I'd say I could gun nerd out and talk about every friggin' gun, but I thought those are two like grounded gun comparisons that you could actually do at long range that would have been cool and gotten the respective iconic weapons like in there.
Yeah, I'm just fine with this one because they didn't give some like pull some stupid thing out of their ass like, whoa, the MAT 49 has a little finger grip on the front of it,
yeah.
so it's gonna have better accuracy over it.
Yeah, the MAT 49 shoots down a helicopter.
Yeah. So going on to, I guess these are explosives. I think they explosive round. We have the Bouncing Betty, immediately recognizable from Call of Duty World at War, classic. Stats.
Getting mad.
Stats are frag radius of 50 yards, 9 pounds, so pretty heavy. I feel like TNT 6.5 ounces and made of steel. Matt, why are they called Bouncing Betties?
Well, the nickname of this is the Bouncing Betty, and she's a very, very naughty girl. Robert, that is a quote from Robert Wilhelm Mccain in this episode.
Wilhelm.
Isn't there a like one that's double the size called Bouncing Bertha? That's a quote from me right now.
From me a second ago.
Well, it's funny, Craig. I never even bothered to look up why it's called the Bouncing Betty.
Whoa, Black Betty.
You're getting like song lyrics.
Oh, that's because I searched Black Betty.
Why is it called the Black Betty?
This is some research in real time, people. Nickname. It's an odd nickname from American infantrymen.
There's a Bouncing Betty over there.
Well, I don't know why it was called that, but
Quora's reliable.
Probably some Quora. It's the freaking Yahoo Answers.
I feel like Betty is just kind of arbitrary.
Yeah,
it's just the bouncing part.
Yeah, it's because she's a very, very naughty girl. So
very, very naughty girl.
I know. The mine is tested against 4 Vietcong targets. It is what it is. They give it. There's not much for me to add. Like what you see on the show is the Bouncing Betty.
Yeah. What I did like about this test is you can see they do it like in like a sand dune.
Yeah.
So you get to see all the pellets exactly where they go. So that was cool. I don't know if that was a deliberate choice or a happy accident, but it was cool because they didn't really point it out, but I thought that was cool to see.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because they have like targets set up, and Max ends up saying that the shrapnel at 20 yards is ineffective. When you watch that aerial shot, like it's hitting all around the dunes, and it looks like it's going pretty fast. So even if it's not lethal at like 20 yards out, probably you're getting hit with like this size BB. Like it probably hurts like really bad.
My favorite, I tried to look up how it got its name too, and like every website had the same copy and pasted answer. It was given this name by American infantrymen, and then the sentence ends. But every website had that same quote.
That's kind of what I was running into.
Yeah.
So.
You see that a lot with weapons. Like if you find a fact like that, you get lightly, you could see them just sourcing each other.
Hey, how about this? If one of you in the comments knows why it's called the Bouncing Betty, go ahead and slap it down there in the
We'll send you a
section.
season 2 DVD.
I'm going to be honest. It slipped my mind to like look up why it was called that because the show pretty much what you see is what you get with what they present. So I was like,
Yeah. For the test, we kind of touched on it a bit. Pretty straightforward. They give the Vietcong the nurse scrubs again. It's a controlled demolition test, and yeah, you can see the ball bearings hit the sand. They say that after 15 yards, the killing power drops off, and Danny says that the mine is heavy and easily spotted, which makes their mine better. I don't necessarily disagree. I don't really feel strongly about that statement. So, moving on to the Ponzi 2 and F1 grenade combination. So, we haven't seen a combo like this since the Tarj and Dirk. So, the Ponzi stats.
It's unfair that they get 2 explosives and the Waffen Ss only get 1.
Yeah. The Ponzi is fun to say. The Ponzi. It is a frag radius of 50 yards. It's 5 pounds, 2.5 ounces of TNT, and is made of cast iron. The F1 grenade, frag radius of 35 yards, 1.5 pounds, 2 ounces of TNT, and steel. Any info on the Tripwire Traps?
Yeah, you're going to be amazed about this, how it got its name. When you hit the tripwire, it was named this by American infantry. It would go, boom, zzz. I swear.
Really?
No, I made that up.
Okay. Yeah. It's like the Iqua.
If you could just read the stats on the F1, I'll just kind of cover them together.
I did.
You did? Yeah. Hey, I'm going to cover both of them right
Lucas was so into that
I was
joke.
thinking
He
of
was
that
going to
joke.
tell. He's like, I'm about to knock their socks off.
Both of these are Soviet made during the Second World War. Vietcong used many different types of grenade traps. This was the most common one that they used was not this. It was called the just can grenade. It was literally just a grenade. You pull the pin out and you stick it in the can.
They stick it in a pineapple?
Yeah. But they would just stick it inside of a can with a tripwire. They did a bunch of different variations of just creating traps essentially with grenades where when you trip over something, it pulls the pin out. It's still... Here's when I go into there's still active landmines on both sides of Vietnam today, and we need to clean them up. They didn't just use these specific landmines or grenades. Again, they used whatever were supplied, wherever they could find, or just even made improvised explosives. But this is pretty decent pick from the show because they got plenty of supplies from the Soviets. This would have been kind of a leftover World War II weapon that they would have just been given to create traps with.
What about the F1 grenade? Is that a Soviet weapon?
Yeah, they're both Soviet weapons. They're kind of, one's just a regular fragmentation grenade that you carry, and one is set up as like a grenade trip mine.
Yeah.
So the use of in conjunction, if I really did a deep dive, I'm sure I could tell you if that's true or not. But I could see them come up with something like that where it's just kind of like a double rigged trap.
Yeah.
And as we're about to see in the test, this thing will just fucking destroy you. This thing.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced they didn't pack some C4 into the
Oh,
yeah.
No, this was 100% real test. Just like every explosive test on this show, the pig gets turned into a red mist.
Yeah, so going on to the test. So starting with the Ponzi, they let Dorian pull the trigger of the controlled explosive, and he seems so excited. He's like getting ready to cut the ribbon at the ceremony. He's like so into it. And there's a funny clip for B-roll of U.S. soldiers disarming a trap and then exploding. I think he holds up the, he's like...
Yeah, it's the way he turns around is like, ah.
Take the picture.
Yeah, then he
Boom.
blows up. So...
Funny, he didn't turn into mist, though.
Yeah, what's really impressive, I actually didn't pick up on this the first time you guys pointed it out, the F1 grenade test. So you theorize, and I think it's true, that rather than actually testing the grenade as a grenade, they stuff the grenade in the pig.
Yeah.
Because the pig explodes outwardly, and all of the singe parts are in the inside of the pig rather than like his legs or something.
Yeah,
like that.
you can see whatever explosive they're packing in.
100% just a charge that they placed.
Inside the pig, and they have like a Ponzi hanging at like waist level with the pig, almost to try and trick you into thinking that's what explodes, but you see it hanging there afterward and it didn't. And what's left is like you see the pig explodes into this mist, and if you watch in the slow-mo, you see the top half of the pig just fucking rockets off into the sky. Like it goes flying, like the head and the shoulders, and then what's left over is just like the legs. And so it leads me to believe, and when you watch the slow-mo when they show the pig, you can see like the fireball coming out like of the pig. So it makes me think they just they had him gutted, and then they put the explosives in there and stitched him up with some blood packs, and then just
They probably
no grenade explodes like that.
Yeah.
They probably used half that show's budget on that explosion.
They probably like tested it like true, and then it was like super underwhelming. They're like, oh, we got to beef this up a little bit.
yeah.
Because how do you know? Have you ever thrown a grenade?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Should I tell that story again?
Where?
Recruit training.
Yeah. So
Actually, Marine combat training.
yeah, fun stuff.
That's not as good as boxing, though. So
Yeah.
you learn how to throw the first
You wouldn't
blow.
have survived in the SS.
Yeah, they told me no, I had a failing.
Yeah. I couldn't prove my Aryan ancestry.
They would have told you no, Lucas, because you're ugly. Got him.
Cut it. Cut the footage.
I'll move on for Lucas. They give the edge to Viet Cong, considering that they make a pig disappear. I can't disagree. Any thoughts on the edge?
Based on
There's
what,
just legs left.
Yeah,
based on what we see,
based on
I
the
gotta
facts, that
agree.
would
Yeah.
be-
Yeah, assuming it's reality. So the final weapons category is the pistol. What do they call it? Do they call this medium range, short range?
Close range.
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
the only episode of this show that I can recall that does not have a medium range weapon tested.
Yeah. I guess
Huge-
once you get
it's-
into the modern, it gets all fucked up and like weird, the categories. Because you have pistol alongside like the.
Well, yeah,
Focus.
it like what is is a assault rifle a medium range weapon compared to a sniper or compared to a pistol? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You can kind of arbitrarily put them at whatever range.
And you compare anything against anything.
A flamethrower against a punchy stake.
Yeah. So they start with the Tokarev TT-33 pistol. Stats are 100-yard range, ammo 7.62 by 25 millimeter, 6-round mag, and muzzle velocity of 1,375 FPS. I did want to real quick go into the stats for the Mauser as well. Mauser C96, because I had a question. A range of 200 yards, ammo 7.63 by 25 millimeter, which is almost identical. 20-round mag and 1,575 FPS. What is that small difference in the ammo size?
So I'm glad you asked that, actually, because
Do they put 6 in the show?
It's 7.62 and 7.63.
Yeah,
by
I'm saying
25
for the
millimeter.
ammo count, like the magazine.
I
for
had
the Tokarev.
I think it was 8.
Yeah, it should be 8.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't do this very carefully, so you'll see on the.
Oh, I thought you were asking about the ammo difference.
Either way, they're giving like an 8-round mag versus a 20-round mag.
Yeah.
Which I have something to say about every Mauser stat, but to answer your question, Craig, the reason the cartridges are so similar but just slightly different is because the Mauser C96 was very popular in Russia during World War I and during the Russian Revolution when they were fighting a civil war. And it was so popular that when the Soviets came into power, it was one of the few non-Russian guns you were allowed to purchase was a Mauser C96.
Is it a German gun?
It is a
It
German
is,
gun.
yeah.
And so, because of that, the Soviets were like, we need to make the Soviet version of this gun. And they made the Tokarev TT-33. And they designed, like the Russians always do, they had to make it like slightly different. So that round is basically them saying, give us the non-German version of the Mauser's round, essentially. That's why the Russians have, you'll notice Russian guns have specific ammo for like everything. Like, they don't use the 9mm Luger. They use the 9mm Makarov, I'm pretty sure. They don't use the 5.56. They use the 5.45, which does the same thing as the 5.56, but in very similar stats. But it's like they had to modify it just like a little bit to make it a Soviet round. So
Well,
that's
different.
why.
Yeah, there's like the 7.62 by 54 rimmed.
Yes.
Which is slightly different.
Exactly. It's slightly different than the NATO cartridge.
Yeah.
Because they were like, this is good, make it Soviet, and
The R stands for Russian.
all I'll say is about the rest of it is putting the range at 200 yards is pretty generous. That is the effective range of this gun, but like shooting a pistol at 200 yards is like
Sucks.
quite a task.
Yeah.
Like shooting with
2
the
football fields.
well, yeah, where you're holding like the little notch sight.
They
and you-
pull out the extended stock.
Well, I was thinking you could probably pull it off better with the extended stock, but they only pull that out for the full auto because that's a certain variant of the gun that goes full auto and like comes with the stock. And it was cool to see that tested, but it does leave the question of like what is getting put in the sim, right? Like, is this going in the sim as a single shot pistol, or is this going in the sim as like the German's just going to have the German video game character when he gets into his GTA weapon wheel, he's just pulling out.
Are they going to
like,
account for the time to put the stock on the gun? Because apparently it's like
Right.
unusable without the stock with the full
with
auto.
the full auto, yeah, and
I mean, it would just be all over the place.
yeah,
Yeah.
They also get the muzzle velocity incorrect. 1575 feet per second. Where I looked, I found 1394 feet per second, which was closer to the Tokarev's muzzle velocity. And the 20 round magazine is like a really big difference. They do make 20 round mags, but it was more standard to have a 10 round mag in this gun.
Or Mauser.
Yeah, for the Mauser, you were only using a 20 round mag if you were doing the full auto carbine version where you slap the stock on and we're going like this. So yeah, it's a pretty iconic weapon.
One of the coolest pistols ever created,
It
in
i-
my opinion.
it is-
Featured in Resident Evil 4. It was called the Red 9 in that game.
And Red Dead Redemption 2.
What? Oh, yeah.
I remember being
Yeah, it
surprised it
was.
was in that game.
Probably most recognizable though to most people as Han Solo's pistol
Yeah,
in Star
slapped a
Wars.
scope on it.
They put a scope and a funny looking muzzle device on the front of it. And I actually remember seeing an interview where George Lucas said that every Star Wars blaster is just a modified World War II gun. And it's always made me pay attention. Like the big clone rifle is just an MG42, but they take like the mag out and they put a scope on it.
Well, funny thing with the clone thing too, I will say, not to get into Star Wars talk,
Yeah.
but I was digging in. My dad long ago got that like Blu-ray set, like the Skywalker 6 movies or whatever, and they have like little things they talk about like props and like you can look a 3D model. And one of the art directors said that the clone trooper gun is the same thing as the stormtrooper. It just flipped upside down and extended.
Yes. Yep. It's pretty cool. Of course, since Disney took it over, Disney is just basically does what every other movie does. And they're like, get an AR-15 in there and just slap a goofy looking scope on it. So you watch Rogue One and every gun is just a fucking AR-15 and you're like, cool, you know? But yeah, it's a cool pistol. A lot of countries. My only problem with it is that the Waffen SS probably would not be carrying it. It was not the standard issue gun of the German military. It was only ever issued to a portion of the Air Force, the Luftwaffe. The standard issue pistol of the German military is the Luger, and it is a lot more likely that a Waffen SS soldier would be carrying that, which is just a not single shot, but semi-automatic 9mm. I feel like they just wanted to get a mouse. They had a connection on a full auto Mauser and they wanted to get it on the show. So, and honestly, I'm cool with them overlooking it because it's not out of the realm of possibility that a SS guy could have had a Mauser.
At least we
And-
get Mauser representation, unlike the Colt.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah.
You can buy a real one still if you have about $4.5-5 grand. sitting
Right.
around.
Well, they had a hookup on a full auto one, and it was made for a much cooler test than this is a much more cooler and interesting pistol, I think, to test than like the Luger would have been. It would have just been like, here's another 9mm pistol. We've
Yeah, honestly, when they bring the Tokarev out, it just looks a little underwhelming.
Yeah. I know. This is the Russian hand cannon.
And the Tokarev, we are introduced to it with a scene where a serviceman is banging a Vietnamese sex worker who then shoots him in the back of the head after they have sex, which is awesome.
He's like fat and old, not to body shame, but like he's supposed to be a soldier. You know what I mean?
Tucked his dick away, like in the.
And he's like buttoning up his pants.
Scene to like introduce that, but they're like, no, this is what we're gonna do.
It's weird because I feel like if I was Vietnamese, I may be offended by that scene, as well as like just trying to make the servicemen look as disgusting. And like,
yeah.
it's just a very weird tones in that scene.
Yep.
And classic Deadliest Warrior.
It's like Full Metal Jacket. They have a lot of very uncomfortable scenes with Vietnamese prostitutes that just keep going and going.
Yeah.
And you're like, is this a bit or is this person trying to kill them? And it's like, this is so just fucking uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah. So Matt kind of covered a decent bit of the history with the Tokarev. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add?
It's just a variant of the TT30 product line. That TT33, there was a bunch of different variants of this pistol. It's Soviet-produced semi-automatic, and it is the pistol that was replaced by the Makarov that we also saw on the show.
Yeah.
It's still used in Bangladesh and North Korean armed forces today. They have been renowned for their simplicity, power, and accuracy. They can also be chambered in 9mm. And as you'd imagine, again...
So can the Mauser, by the way. That's another parallel between these two guns. Like,
yeah, they can both do. I mean, that's very common for handguns to be able to be chambered in 9.
Yeah.
There's a long list of handguns the Vietcong used, including United States ones, British ones, Soviet Union ones, including the Mauser.
How funny would it have been if the only Colt 45 we got on this show was the Vietcong guy having it?
The Mauser was pretty popular for them to use as well. It was a good pick for the show. They received a large amount of Soviet weapons again, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really have a lot for the Tokarev test. I don't think there was really that much to say. The Mauser test, Robert has a very interesting pistol grip for the Mauser. I think he I don't even know if I remember. He's like, I'll obviously put it on screen, but he has a very unusual grip.
The only thing I put
he has it and he grabs the
mag.
He
does two-handed.
He does a two-handed grip when he's firing single shot even. I noticed that too. Yeah.
The only thing I put about this is just Danny fires a Tokarev, hits all 5 targets in 24 seconds, missing 3 shots. And it looks like a standard handgun firing test. But there's just this looming presence the entire time. You already know they're just going to obsess over the Mauser.
Yeah.
Why even do this test?
Yeah. Right.
They're just going to obsess over the full auto. You don't even need to fire the Tokarev.
Don't they split on the edge though? Don't they?
Oh, so when debating the edge, I wrote the producers throw Max under the bus by making him argue in favor of the Tokarev. I say forced because there's no way he's making this argument earnestly.
Yeah.
No, he mentioned in his Reddit AMA that sometimes he did just argue to be devil's advocate, and I think that's why we see him and Jeff do that sometimes, because the producers are like, all right, so we can't just all agree. And his argument he makes might be the worst take, the coldest take I've ever fucking heard on this show, like maybe even worse than the stiletto take, because he goes,
I think the Tokarev is a more reliable weapon, and because it forces the user to slow down, take his time, pick his shots, you're going to get more deadly kills.
I wrote a one-word response to that, and I just said absurd.
Yeah, but the
Fuck
Mauser,
you.
The Mauser doesn't have poop on it.
That's
when I'm someone's trying to kill me, I don't want to be forced to do anything.
Yeah.
And you could also take your time and aim better with a 20-round mag.
Right. Yeah.
That's not what's going through your head.
Magazine size does not correlate to accuracy.
I forgot he said that. I kind of thought the same thing. Max, you idiot.
It was him just trying to make it interesting when we all knew, one's got way more ammo and it could go full auto, so it's definitely
the only thing he could have been is maybe a reliability issue of he could have been well, it might jam. No.
Then we could get a terrible fake reliability test on
it's jammed.
They put Nutella on the Mauser. It's jammed.
Yeah. So that's it for all of the tests. Okay, in case it wasn't clear, they gave the edge to the Mauser. So yeah, we're down to the sim.
Yeah.
Lucas is a returning sim master. You want to take it away, Lucas?
I do. Some of my favorite parts. Thank you, whoever suggested to cover the sim, because it's now just become my little project every week that I get to have fun with. So Buckle your seatbelts, ladies and
Hit
gentlemen.
that enter key.
Because I am your sim master for the day once again. We're taking this back to 5-on-5 to make sure one lucky shot doesn't end this. We've got 5 Vietcong versus 5 Nazis. I'm not calling them Waffen Ss. I know what they are.
The world needs to know.
Yeah.
We open up on a very brutal scene of the Vietcong having a captured Nazi. They throw him on the ground. They show immediately after they throw him on the ground, a second shot of them throwing him on the ground. Just for good measure. They give him a kick in the head as the other Nazis are sneaking up on them. One of the Nazis strategically places a bouncing Betty, a bouncing Bertha. The Vietcong pulls out his Tokarev. It's about to kill the Nazi when the others show up. The Vietcong getting surprised attacked. How weird.
Yeah.
The Nazi spits in the Vietcong's face, and the Vietcong guy gets gunned down by the other Nazis. One down. The Nazi guy runs away. We get a couple shots at guns that weren't in the episode at all. The Nazis flee the gunfight. The Vietcong give chase. Is it just me, or does whoever flees always end up winning?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yep.
like a common trope
It
I've
is
picked up on.
It's the setup they usually have on this. Yep.
So the Nazis regroup, and the former prisoner gets handed a Mauser. He helps cover his buddy's back. Oh, shit. His buddy fell into a pungy, shit-covered trap.
They show him running, and the dude is booking it.
Yeah.
He's got the rifle, and he's like,
Dude, the running in this is pretty hilarious.
it's like he is booking it, and then just eats shit into the Punchy Stakes.
The guy
trap.
eats shit, and he stops and stares at him for a minute. But you kind of get this subtle feeling in the back of your head that you're now looking at the main character of this for some reason. The one Nazi who looks different than anyone else.
Craig had said, like, when we first watched this, Craig was like, you know that guy's gonna win because like he's the prisoner at the beginning, so he's gonna be the last guy alive at the end. Like,
So, and then this guy kind of, oh, here we go. The world's most selective bouncing Betty decides not to go off when like 3 guys step on it. My number 4 is Mr. Unlucky.
Betty is very choosy.
Another Vietcong down.
she's a picky lass.
We continue with just a shit ton of running around in the woods. Like seriously, 10 Usain Bolts just going against each other. The Nazis finally come to a little creek and are going to cross it. But oh dang, it's booby trapped. Another Nazi down. They showed the same shot of this Vietcong guy running through the woods. They reused the same shot of this guy running like 3 times. And he finally catches up to the Nazi at the creek. Must have been out of breath because he gets gunned down immediately. He ran for like 20 minutes just to get
He
gunned
like
down.
turns the corner and he gets shot, and they have him like on a wire or something because he goes flying, like jumps into the air.
Like straight up.
Did you ever see any of those like stunt wires behind the scenes where it like rips people
Yeah.
out of the scene? They're like
It's
violent.
intense, yeah.
2v2. Oh wait, no it isn't, because our main character turns around and guns down a Vietcong almost with a wink at the camera. Our last Vietcong guy runs across the bridge like dancing, dodging a ton of bullets. The Nazi runs out, pulls out his Tokarev, shoots the Nazi straight in the head. We get a pistol firefight between our main character and the doomed last Vietcong guy.
The main antagonist who was throwing him on the ground earlier.
Until they both run out of ammo. The Nazi guy, of course, runs over, grabs his Flamethrower. We knew it was going to come to this.
Yeah.
The Vietcong reloaded his handgun, but it's all for naught. He gets burnt to a crisp. That means with a shout of, does he say like Deutschland?
Deutschland.
I'm not going to say it because it doesn't feel right. So I'm just going to say the Vietcong doesn't win.
And Matt rejoices.
Yeah, I was super happy, and I was like, good to see the good guys getting a win here.
Yeah. Actually, no.
Right.
So for the kill totals for the Nazis, the Flamethrower gets 177 kills.
178.
These numbers are all fucked up. I just do random shit. The MP28 is...
We're trying to replace Craig with a promiscuous, good-looking woman on the show.
And we need one more cast member. You cast and call.
Yeah, I think I blew it there just by describing them as that.
So MP28 gets, 310? Is that correct?
Yes.
Bouncing Betty 76. The Mauser 50.
Yeah.
for a total of 614.
Jawohl.
Vietcong, the Mat 49 gets 117.
177.
177. The Ponzi 2 and F1 combination gets 81. Tokarev gets 41.
42.
What the fuck?
Craig was like, hi.
Where did you get these numbers from?
Craig's writing down these numbers. He's like, he's got that porn video he described earlier open.
He keeps getting distracted.
He's like,
that video lasted me the entire time doing my research.
he's like,
The Punchy Stakes 86
yep.
for a total of 386.
Yep.
Okay. So some analysis. Obviously, we'll get into our final thoughts at the very end, but the Punchy Stakes getting a lot of kills. Second most for the Vietcong, as Austin said earlier in the episode, which is a little bit crazy. The Nazi submachine gun getting 310 is really crazy, considering that the Vietcong had pretty much the same weapon.
So
and it gets almost like a little bit less than double.
The MP28 gets 133 more kills than the Mat 49, which is the biggest difference between any of the weapons on here. And so it begs the question, like, if there is a sim, right, then they have to have some kind of stat when it comes to like firearms, like accuracy and training or whatever, and that must have been what this was, or it's producers making it up.
They did kind of like an X Factor thing. They briefly mention it like halfway, where they say like, do they give the Vietcong like home field advantage because that was their X Factor, is their knowledge of their homeland?
Maybe, yeah, you're right.
And then what was the SS's X Factor?
Boxing.
Like,
Well, and then in the X Factor thing that they do, it's literally just like they're a war machine who keeps pushing on and just bulldozes anything in their way.
Dude,
their X Factor is meth.
I just bent my leg too far back and got the worst Charlie horse. I'm like, oh my god. I'm good though. I can keep going.
Yeah. So getting into the aftermath. Not too much to say about it.
I had a
compared
couple
to
things about the results.
Well, do you want us to save those for your final thoughts?
Yeah, that's fine.
So the panel is Gary Tarpinian, the producer of the show, Danny and Robert, which they call him Robert McCain, and there's no Wilhelm in his name, and he's dressed in a suit, which is a far cry from his usual outfit.
What kind of suit?
Normal one.
Good.
So I guess to make him seem less Nazi-ish, it's just Robert McCain. Gary. So I gotta admit, Gary, please come on the show, but you don't come off very good in this aftermath. He just seems like such a bullshitter in this one. He says that very proudly he's the one, maybe not proudly. He said that I'm the one that came up with the idea for this show. He says because he's a fan of the show, I wanted to see what would happen in this matchup. And he flat out admits that he picked this episode because he knew it was going to be controversial.
Yeah.
So
at least he's honest.
And that to me, because he's not in any other aftermaths, I feel like the other hosts, Max especially, almost protested this episode.
Probably.
Because even at the end of the final results screen, Max looks very weird that the Nazis won. He's like this totally flat. Even the camera angle's weird. He's like, out of 1,000 battles, the Waffen Ss came away with. And so
that was kind of weird.
Yeah, I get the vibe that there was a weird conflict with Gary really wanting to do this concept to be controversial, and other people being like, "Yeah, we don't want to represent like the Nazis."
Yeah.
So that's just my opinion. Someone asks if the sim was in the jungle like the reenactment, and I love this. So Gary says that they either try to pick a battlefield that is neutral for both sides, or that's kind of divided in half. So like one half would favor one.
Like a hero skate map.
Yeah, one would favor the other. And he says that in the reenactment, there's that bridge they point out to you. He says one side of the bridge is the Vietcong jungle and the other side is the woodland forest. And so he's like, when he crosses that bridge, it's him getting into the Nazi woodland forest. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
So stupid.
Yeah, but you didn't pick up on that. But he was entering like in paintball. You have like the red zone and the blue zone are like laser tag.
Meanwhile, cut to Reddit AMA. Max Geiger's like, yeah, there's no environment in the sim. We just didn't do that.
The sim doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't believe any of this shit. A fan who's probably 10 says, at the beginning of the sim, the VC were speaking a language I don't understand. What were they saying? And Kieran's like, well, it was probably Vietnamese. And they say that they're saying, Danny says they're saying something along the lines of, I'm going to execute you. You may as well say something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you can kind of get the vibe of what he's saying. That's the whole point of the scene is without words, you understand like what's being communicated. Yeah. And some dumb little kid's like, it's a language I don't know. Like everyone else in the audience could speak Vietnamese, I guess. The viewer asks if Bouncing Betty took shrapnel and friendly fire into account in the sim. Gary says no.
Right, yeah. No, we don't do that.
Yeah.
No, in Call of Duty, your own Bouncing Betty won't hurt you, so.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
This isn't hardcore.
This is video game rules. Friendly fire is turned off. No one's getting killed by, because that doesn't happen in real war.
Yeah. And then when introducing the next episode of Roman Centurion vs. Rashford, which I can't wait to shoot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gary, he just sounds like such a sleazeball. He doesn't give any opinion. He just goes, hey, watch it and make sure to tell your friends to watch it. Which it sounds like...
It's like plugging his YouTube channel.
Yeah, like this like middle-aged dad being like, hey, make sure you tell your friends to go to my store.
This is the producer of the show?
Yeah. He's like weirdly like... I mean, I appreciate the hustle, but dude, this is like the biggest TV show at Spike at the time. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know, but
follow me, Gary at Aliciousness.
Yeah. So that was it. Nothing too crazy about the aftermath. Hope that saved you the $3 as always. And I guess we're getting on to our closing thoughts, gentlemen. I guess maybe when we start with Matt because you had something you wanted to say about the outcome.
I'll say, with the results. The primary thing that stuck out to me was the MP28 outperforming the MAT 49. It's kind of BS, but it very much reminds me of this whole matchup reminds me of Spetsnaz versus IRA. And there's a similar thing that happens in that where the AK-74 outscores the AR-15 by like 4 times that amount. So it must be some kind of stat with like training or whatever that they put into this. The Flammenwerfer outperformed the Punchy Stakes by quite a wide margin. However, the Punchy Stakes got more kills than either of the explosives or pistols, which is kind of bizarre. I don't know. Punchy Stakes were pretty effective in DW, apparently. This was 5 out of 13 in the largest gap in Season 2, so it's basically in the middle. It was relatively close compared to the rest of Season 2. Here are my last final thoughts. I agree with the outcome because, I'll tell you why I agree with it. Obviously, real life, I'd be rooting for, the Vietcong to beat up on the Nazis. But we've heard the hosts on this show make references to apples versus oranges, and that being the inspiration for the kind of matchups they look for. I would say that this matchup... Because they probably thought, well, there's apples versus oranges. You got a conventional fighter and a guerrilla fighter. I would say that this matchup is more like a hammer versus a screwdriver, in that you can't really compare them because one is great for nails and the other is great for screws.
That's like a perfect analogy.
The scenario that Deadliest Warrior presents is one that inherently favors a conventional soldier like the SS. The Vietcong weren't that successful in their direct engagements against American forces in Vietnam, but that's because the guerrilla soldier has a much different set of goals than the conventional one. A matchup similar to this one was when the Spetsnaz fought the IRA, and it was a complete blowout, and I think it's for the same reasons. Like, one of these guys is trained that this, for the Spetsnaz, like 5-on-5 is their scenario, like a peak scenario for them. And same thing with the SS, like, we have 5 like kind of ragtag, as they call it, guerrilla soldiers who don't have that much training. They have secondhand equipment, and we got to go take them out. The SS have got the best gear, best weapons. They've got tanks, fighters at their disposal. Like, that's the ideal situation for them. The Vietcong are going into it knowing they can't like fight them in an open battle. So they're going to be hiding in tunnels, laying these traps, trying to break down morale. So again, hammer versus screwdriver. I just think this situation is more conducive to one type of soldier than the other. And I don't really think it tells you all that much about how the Viet Cong would really fare.
A Viet Cong soldier would come back and kill him in his sleep.
Right.
It's very much the same situation.
Kind of true, yeah. And my personal final thoughts was I thought this was an okay episode. It was kind of entertaining. It was not on purpose very funny, so it's ironically very funny. They wanted to be like shocking and brutal, but a lot of it came off as very cheesy.
I could not stop laughing.
Yeah.
Rewatching this.
And it's sort of an intriguing matchup on the surface to me because I was like, oh, we're going to get like some cool World War II weapons versus some cool like Cold War weapons. But I was really let down.
Yeah, not so much.
I was really let down when I saw like the Ponzi going up against the Bouncing Betty, because it's like, okay, it's explosive. Like, because the bigger bomb is better, And then
the giant nuke they set off in the test.
And then it's like Flamethrower versus Punchy Stake. Flamethrowers are cool, and it was cool to watch, but like, how often did the Waffen SS go into battle with like a Flammenwerfer on his back?
I mean, they were probably used for like only specific purposes to like clear out buildings and such.
I know it was like, oh, they're clearing out the jungle in here, but that's goofy. And I suppose those are my biggest complaints, are the weapons we don't get. And I wrote down, because this is kind of a grievance for Levis, I wrote down like 5 matchups I would have liked to have seen. Kar 98K versus the SKS, Sturmgewehr versus AK-47, MP40 versus the PPSH. I know they have one. They show it. The airsoft PPSH that they have. MG42 versus PKM, and the RPG versus the Panzerschreck. Those would have all been cool matchups, and I think any one of them could have improved the episode. And they didn't have a mid-range weapon. They always have a mid-range weapon. They could have thrown one of those into that category.
The Panzerschreck? Is that the one you fire and it goes, donkey?
Donkey. So, yeah, no, we all know that Shrek is a famous anti-fascist. So. All right, those are my final thoughts.
Okay. Lucas, anything to add?
Yeah, I didn't even really take like closing notes for this one because I just wasn't sure how I felt about this episode.
Also, the Waffen SS helped in the Holocaust. They're the They're the bad guys.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, they're the bad guys, and then in America we look at Vietcong like bad guys, so it's just bad guys versus bad guys. And what that just tells to me is what the picture that's painted is Gary just wanted this to be like an episode to like either piss people off or people be like, ugh, like over. And it has potential to be an interesting episode, as he says. But like my point that I just harp on is there's so much weapons that we could have seen that we didn't. I mean, the MAT 49, it's cool. But like, what is a MAT 49? Have you seen one before this episode? Probably not.
Never.
But the only thing we do get out of this is I'm glad we got to see a Mauser. And the Tokarev can be considered an interesting weapon. So that's like really the only matchups. I know you guys shit on them. Punchy Stakes, shit on them. But I think it's a cool weapon but not for this show. I would rather like see it in like
if it had something more fair to compare it to. I just feel like when you're comparing that kind of specific natural element trap and you give the Nazis like a flamethrower, it's like not fair.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't even want to say it's a cool weapon. I would just say it's something that like is intriguing. Almost like
very unique.
I would want to see it in like a documentary. Like it's interesting in that
I would want to fall into one.
Yeah, but I don't but I don't think the Vietcong fall into the Deadliest Warrior formula. No. I think they could have come up with a much better matchup for either team.
I got an idea. So we're going to come up with, at the end of this podcast, once we finish all the episodes, the Deadliest Warrior cookbook. And we're going to have Punchy Stakes. And it's going to be chocolate-covered steak.
Oh, I like that.
So Nutella.
Pretzel stick.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah, pretzel sticks too. That'd be good.
So do I agree with the results on this one? No, because I think both teams should have not won.
1,000 battles, 0 kills.
It's a tie.
Yeah. Austin.
Matt, you kind of said it pretty perfectly. In the way that like all the tests and everything and the information is presented in the show.
Yeah, you said it good. It's like screwing a hammer.
Yeah. The way that everything is like presented in the show, I would agree that, you know, the SS probably would have won this fight. But like, I think, again, like the factor for the Viet Cong, like having their home field advantage and like all the booby traps and stuff, I feel like if the SS were like put in a situation like the Vietnam War, like the US was, they'd probably have a pretty similar outcome to the United States, like just getting destroyed by the Viet Cong because it's such an unfamiliar environment to them. So, but I mean, what can you do?
Yeah. And I guess to kind of close stuff out, I agree with pretty much everything everybody said. Just to reiterate, I do think that Max really did not want the Nazis to win throughout the episode, and there was probably some tension about the decision to have an episode like this. As for the show itself, the idea, the biggest problem is there's this disconnect between the show in theory and the show like in practicality, since we have no idea how movement works in the sim, if it's there at all. Yeah. Like Max describes the sim like it's this 3D space, and they try to pretend like it is something like what you see in the reenactment.
Yeah.
But I think it's just two little dots going up against like long range, medium range.
Yeah,
like
it's literal just like
and a paddle and a little ball that just goes, dude.
It's literally just crunching numbers over and over.
Yeah, and they try to pretend like it's this 3D space.
They've given specific games that this sim is based on, and we've talked about it on here. Like Slytherin Studios, like the game was called like History Channel's Greatest Medieval Battles or Greatest Rome Battles or whatever. And you look up those games, and it literally is like you have like a 16, like a 4x4 tile. Right. And you can place like your legionnaire, you have your knights and your spearmen and your bowmen, and you're moving it around like it's a board game. And so they're 1-on-1 or 5-on-5. I imagine they're just like you said, Craig, they start at long range and then they're moving closer together.
Yeah. And if we don't have an idea of how movement works, you cannot accurately represent like a guerrilla fighter who's entirely based on traps. And this is supposed to be the trap episode. Like even Nazis have like the bouncing Betty as their trap.
Yeah.
But since we don't understand, again, movement or space in the sim, it's you kind of have to just guess. The producers, I feel like, don't understand this show. Like when Gary says like I wanted to see this to be controversial. If you really did want to be controversial, then rather than just ignore the trap element, which is a dumb idea, but if you have to do it, you can, instead of Punchy Stakes or Bouncing Betty, do any of the matchups you talked about and just do a head-on fight against both people. It's not the end of the world if you have to have Viet Cong without traps. Obviously, it's more interesting, but it's like they don't understand the sim. Yeah. So that disconnect, I think, really makes this episode not work. And I think that's probably something we'll see going forward, is just the producers not understanding how the sim or the show works.
Probably running out of ideas a little bit at this point.
Or they don't care. I mean, I'm sure they have a deeper understanding than we do, but maybe they just don't care. And they pretend like there's this trap element that only can be accurately represented in the sim as it exists.
Whether it was in motion or not at this point, I feel like this episode plants and or waters the seed of some people leaving in season 3.
Yeah. I think you're right.
You can tell on like their faces. Like,
yeah, some people are uncomfortable with this episode being in it. Like, and saying like, like, SS, and you're just like, it's weird. It is a TV weird. Show.
Yeah, and I think it was right on the cusp of that time. Like this episode would not happen today. Like if Deadliest Warrior was around today, they would have just So this was sort of on the precipice, I think, where like Taliban versus IRA was a little bit pushing it. Although Flat Out Nazi, I think, was...
I know, It was very... It was like, these are the bad guys in everything, We're going to put them on the show.
Just the potential that they could win, and the result ends up being that they do, which is just awkward.
Yeah, it is awkward.
Max just like... So, I'd be interested... That'd be one question to ask Max, if, God willing, he ever shows up on this show, is his thoughts on this episode, and if this created a rift, because... I could see like Gary being on the Aftermath. We'll have to watch it at some point. It seems very much like he's Like he's like the boss who has to go in front of like the board and present this really bad idea that nobody else on the team wants to do. Like, and he's like, I want to do this because it's controversial. But like, I could see a lot of people having a problem with this. So I'd be fascinated to learn. But yeah, that's basically it, guys. So
cool.
We hopefully navigate around that landmine, that bouncing Betty of the episode.
That bouncing Betty.
And yeah, if nothing else anyone wants to say, we can move it on.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you guys for having me on. I'm honored. I've been a fan for a really long time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you just kept saying that you love this episode.
Yeah,
so
I've been watching it for years.
Thank you. We hear that all the time, but it means a lot coming from you.
Thank you, Austin. We liked having you on.
thanks.
It was good. I know you were an OG. You loved talking about that show with us back in the day. So I was
many health classes were spent discussing
complaining about dude, I can't. It's bullshit that he won. It's so fucking stupid.
I remember the origins of the stiletto fiasco.
Yeah, so I love it. All right, in that case, appreciate you coming on, Austin, and we'll see you next week for Roman Centurion versus Rajput. Stay deadly.
Stay deadly.